Tshwane residents, especially in Hammanskraal, are still battling to access clean drinking water. City spokesperson Lindela Mashego says the water challenges have negatively affected the residents.
The other three areas of collaboration that the MOU will focus on include water resource planning infrastructure solutions in line with the city's climate action plan, benchmarking of programs, that is green drop, blue drop, and no drop, joint enforcement programs for water pollution prevention, amongst others. The signed MOU reinforces the ideal of Intergovernmental Relations Act, which implores a concerted effort by government in all spheres to work together and to integrate as far as possible their actions in the provision of services.
2 Tshwane Metro Police officers have been fired for terrorizing the Centurion community in Pretoria. The city says the dismissals follow numerous complaints from the residents. However, Tshwane Community Safety MMC Grandi Tennyson could not give details of the exact complaints reported against officers. He says that a disciplinary process was initiated into serious allegations against the pair.
The findings were unequivocal. Both officers were found guilty of conduct unbecoming of a law enforcement personnel, and their actions were deemed a gross violation of ethical standards expected of TMPD members. Through their actions, these individuals have not only betrayed the trust of the community, but have also undermined the reputation and the integrity of the TMPD.
Police are investigating 2 cases of murder after 3 family members were found dead in their home at Blue Water Bay in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape. Police say 46-year-old Mbulelo Nganyana and his 37-year-old wife Yolisa and their 11-year-old daughter were found with gunshot wounds. Police spokesperson Priscilla Naidu says they've also opened an inquest for investigation.
It is alleged that at about 16:20, neighbors heard several gunshots from a house in Bryan Crescent and immediately contacted the police. The deceased person sustained gunshot wounds and they were identified as Imbolelo Nkayana, his wife Yolisa, and their daughter Kazimla. A 9mm firearm was found lying next to the male.
And International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor says South Africa stands ready to work with the new BRICS members. She addressed the BRICS Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting in the Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod. Pandor says the bloc is an important global platform and urged member states to maintain momentum across all pillars of cooperation. Some of the new members of BRICS include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Kailihle Kumalo has more.
International Relations and Cooperation Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor kicked off the address by paying tribute to the late Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, the late Foreign Affairs Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian, and they died in a helicopter crash last month. Pandor also updated her BRICS counterparts about the recent elections in South Africa, saying this was the most competitive election since the dawn of democracy in 1994. The minister also says Pretoria is preparing to assume the G20 presidency on December 1st, 2024. Kailihle Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The top story this hour, Parliament says it has cancelled all flight and accommodation arrangements for MK party members after the party informed the institution that they will not attend the first sitting. For SAFM News, Kimudupima Khalemeli.
And coming up in your sports this hour, a call for VAR in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers and Manny Pacquiao eyeing return to boxing. More details at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for her 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at our insurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and help it out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help it out. Took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from our insurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Are you ready to empower yourself with an accredited tertiary qualification? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning programs will set you up for success. Whether you're balancing work and family or you're a school leaver who must work to support yourself and your studies, Stadio offers access to high-quality, affordable qualifications in law, teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
One outfit will walk away with sad faces when Bakaga clash with Amatites. They both feel it is time to go back to the PSL, but they must deliver football intelligence on the field. Who belongs to the top league of Ipola Lasemzansi, Bakaga or the students? This is the Premier Soccer League promotional playoffs. Baroka FC tackles Pretoria University FC on Wednesday, 12 June at 3 p.m. live on SABC3 and SABC radio stations. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So I've been giving this some thought. What makes South Africa great? So listen, I know there's so much wrong in our country. That's a given, okay? But there's also so much wrong in so many other countries in the world. Now, as much as many things are broken, there are also many things that we do right, okay? So what are the things, individually and through our businesses and our institutions collectively that makes us really great as a country, that really enhances our nation brand globally? So I can think of a few. The obvious one would be Nelson Mandela and his role as a global leader. I can think of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I can think of that first heart surgeon a long time ago, right? And then I can think about the separation of powers in our country, the judiciary, legislature, executive. I think it's something that is impressive. In sport, I think of the World Cup winning Springbok team, 3 times World Cup winners, Rassie Erasmus, the coach twice, winning, same with Siya Kolisi. And then I can think of, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman and the Gift of the Givers. I can think of artists like Black Coffee and Trevor Noah. And I can think of people like Tebe Kalafang, who's been to every single country in Africa. No wonder he's called, he is Mr. Brand Africa. And then our position with regard to financial services. And need I say it, Elon Musk as well. You can debate whether he's born here. Well, he's still born here, how much time he's lived here. But having said all of that, right, here's the thing. All these people, businesses, and institutions, they have an impact on our country and they impact how we are seen globally. So they impact the global brand, whether we like it or not. And the fact is, I've listed maybe 5 and 6. I think if you really put your mind to it, you can probably list 100. There really are 100 great reasons that makes this country totally stand out around the world. No negatives, all absolutely positive. So that's my point. Now, what about you? Think about it for yourself. Just list them down and maybe shout it out on the air. Because, here's the bottom line to this, right? If we don't give a shout out to what makes the special things of our own country, well, honestly, who's going to do it? Who in the world is going to do it on behalf of South Africa if South Africans themselves don't do that? I'm Ashraf Garda, and, well, that's my point. Now, it's up to you. Give a shout out to what makes South Africa great and do that right now.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
And this is certainly the National Pulse. So welcome to the show. We hope you had a wonderful weekend. And we're back to some of the big action here on a Monday afternoon. And as always, here's the question to you as well. What drives the National Pulse today? What moves the National Pulse today? What's our National Pulse rate like right now? Heavy pounding, or is it all very, very slow? Either way, you tell me. I'd like to know. You can call in right away. You know that, 086 000 2032. You can WhatsApp, and you got a WhatsApp text or voice note combinations, 0614 104 107. If you're tweeting using the X platform, just tag SFM Radio, tag me, Ashraf Garda. Use the hashtag The National Pulse. I'll look out for it, and do the same thing on Facebook. You got all these multiple combinations. And wherever you are listening, well, how about, give yourself a shout out so that I know where you're listening from, so I can give you a shout out. Give yourself the shout out, I'll give you a shout out, but also give South Africa a shout out. And you know that, you can catch the show nationwide, 104 to 107, so wherever you may be. Anybody listening to us today from Valcom, if you are, I want to know about it. But also, you can also catch us on streaming live. Just go to sfm.co.za, and as well as the SABC Plus app, which means many people, and I know many people do, South Africans and others living around the world tune in to the show. So if that's what you are, I'll give yourself a shout out so I can talk to you about all of that, right? So I did ask you this question. And by the way, add on that point about what for you makes South Africa really great. There are 100 things that must be, okay? So you tell me what they are. Okay, think about that. Let's get to some of the big issues that certainly moves the National Pulse. One of them is the Mkhonto we Sizwe Party, MK, instructing its lawyers to urgently seek an interdict from the Constitutional Court to postpone the very first sitting of Parliament in this, the 7th administration, until their pending case about possible election fraud is finalised. So let's find out more about it. What really is their bottom line with Ntlamulo Ndlela, the MK Party national spokesperson. In fact, we'll get to him in a moment. Perhaps we certainly want to get his thoughts. So maybe if you have any strong views on some of the issues we've got, we'll certainly take it. I can also tell you that this being Youth Month, we certainly want to focus on some of the biggest challenges of South African youth, especially in the next week. Okay, so we've got like 5 working days. We must cover that. What are the 5 big challenges? And very importantly, how is it that we can address those 5 big challenges in terms of actual solutions, right? So we do have now the MK Party national spokesperson, Ntlamulo Ndlela, on the line. Good chatting to you as always. You're live on the National Pulse. Hello.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. Right. So, tell me about the interdict to effectively interdict that very first sitting of Parliament. What's your motivation behind that?
Well, firstly, we're raising the issue regarding the declaration of results, that there shouldn't be a sitting of the National Assembly pending the outcomes of those objections and that process, where we believe, based on the evidence that we've submitted, that there's serious transgressions and also vote rigging, glaringly so.
Okay, so are those your 2 issues that you have raised before, you know, that on this platform and elsewhere, and according to you, I take it that they have not been, adequately addressed?
Yes, we're saying that, the National Assembly cannot be duly constituted when there's still outstanding issues regarding even the same seats that have supposedly being represented for each party. I.e., we're saying that there's certain votes that we know we should have gotten off the back of a number of votes that we've identified that were rigged. But the problem is that the IEC has not taken this seriously enough, and we're saying that the National Assembly cannot be duly constituted where people are going to be sworn in off the back of results that are not a true reflection of the will of the people.
Okay, help us understand, not just in South Africa, but every election. No election is absolutely perfect. There's clearly flaws overall, but you look at the overall percentages and you say, hold it, we think that overwhelmingly the election is fine and free and fair to go with. When you say rigged, right, what's your understanding of rigged? What does rigged mean to you?
Well, I just mentioned that there's discrepancies and transgressions in the form of slips regarding certain votes that were captured on the slips from our party agents, which was sent to us versus what was captured in the system with the IEC. That's the first one. The second one is when the system went down, We have evidence in the form of voice notes and telephone recordings where IT technicians are discussing amongst themselves what it is that they ought to be doing to jeopardize the system. So wouldn't you say that is serious enough evidence to be taken into consideration? Of course it is.
And when
but the
when you
ICC instead goes and declares off the back of these objections, without engaging, the issues or the political parties. And remember, this is not just an MK party posture, and it's not just a posture. It's the reality that there's many other political parties who agree that their voters, in the form of South African citizens' rights, have been infringed upon, and therefore the results are not a true reflection of what ought to have actually transpired there in terms of the outcomes or declared.
Okay. Let me go back. I mean, you make the point that you've got voice notes that of IEC officials saying they know or they want to jippo the system. The system to what end? I mean, to fiddle with one voting district or to fiddle with the entire country? I mean, I'm looking at percentages here. And who are these people? Meaning, how high are they within the IEC to be able to do that?
Let's help you with the misinterpretation. We're talking about IT technicians that work for IT companies that were appointed by the IEC. As you recall, at one point, we requested the IEC share with us as to who are these companies that they're appointing, what are the terms of reference, and more so, we then picked up that those were companies that were not even South African, but more so international companies. And as you would have seen, there's even meetings where the IEC went and sat with certain ambassadors from certain countries, of which the same companies were appointed from. So this is not conspiracy theory. We're talking about conversations of technicians from those IT companies. And the information we are getting, yes, is coming from some of very senior people within the IEC themselves, who have said that they don't want to be associated with exactly what transpired. And that's part of the evidence. So how do you ignore something like that? And why is it we as South Africans take things so lightly? And we want to now deal with these kind of issues around voters' rights so nonchalantly. No.
All right, I hear you. I think, the issues you raise, certainly I would be concerned about that. And I'm just making the point to you, in terms of those conversations you've picked up of IT officials being appointed by the IEC, whether they are South African or not is really neither here nor there. I think the bigger IT company, the bigger issue is really whether they've been able to mass fiddle an entire election as opposed to fiddling with my district of 1,000 voters, and whether they were able to sway 100 voters one way or the other, right? You believe that you've got sufficient grounds that an entire election would change as a result of that?
I hear you referring to hundreds of thousands, and only not even hundreds and thousands, but 1,000 there, 100 there. And, you're creating an impression, unfortunately, that makes it seem as if this is minuscule. One vote being rigged is an infringement of a citizen who would want even one seat for one political party being representing them. Wouldn't you say so? And that one vote does accumulate. So let's not just look at it. And this is the problem when I say we as South Africans take things too lightly. It's a problem. If it means we have to overhaul this election process that we have and this voting process, let's do so as South Africans. We can't be using, templates from all over else in the world. We're a unique country. We've got our unique challenges. And based on the dynamics of this country, we should be looking at processes and systems that work for us.
Okay,
so that one vote infringes on that South African.
All right, I hear you. All I'm saying, and I'm being practical about it, we can't say that every election in the world is absolutely 100%, fault safe. It just doesn't happen like that. You look at a certain percentage, and I understand your point about the importance of one vote counts, right? But I mean, you could have a re-election, and you could have the same problem with 100 votes, and you have another challenge, and it goes on and on. In the meantime, we have a country to run.
No, but I mean, we can talk about having a country to run, and you're sounding like the IEC, when the leadership of the IEC says that they need to make a declaration of the results when they knew they had an additional 3 days to engage with the political parties and discuss the objection. They rushed off the back of what they say, was the impact on the markets. At what point does the IEC now have a mandate to be looking at markets? No. This is an infringement of South Africans' rights. This is an election process What is most important is that South Africans' rights and voices are heard before we can even talk about markets. Markets cannot determine the rights of South Africa.
Well, I would agree with you on that. If the IEC are quoting to say the markets are the reason why they need to rush something, I mean, I would understand that's wrong. But having said that, I now understand there's confirmation that the Parliament's first sitting has been set now for the 14th of June, which by my reckoning means Friday, the 14th of June. Right. Now, let's go back to your issue. So you've raised the concerns. What's happened about the concerns that you've raised? Have the IEC responded in any way or Concord?
We are obviously finalizing the submission on an urgent basis to the Concord. We had to wait for the process to unfold, which is to engage with the Secretary of Parliament to understand as to, are they willing to shift the date in lieu of the situation at hand, which is an urgent matter that needs to be looked into, because in effect, it then leads to the National Assembly being constituted, unconstitutionally.
Okay, so
we are now raising papers, submitting them with all the evidence, to request that the Concord put in abeyance the sitting in, the swearing in of the president, until, as part of our papers in the second form, the evidence that has been presented is taken into consideration. But also, let's not forget that for Parliament, or the National Assembly in this case, to be duly constituted, it needs a minimum of 350, a maximum of 400 members.
All right, so just we need to wrap up. We need to wrap up because I'm out of time here. My understanding is that one has been, there's a different interpretation. It doesn't have to be 350. It needs to be one third of members sitting in Parliament on that day. But that's another issue. Here's the issue I want to just ask you very quickly before we wrap up, right? Whatever the merits of the case is, just two things. One is, do you not see the gravity or the symbolism in terms of a delay of that first Parliament being constituted? Point one, and do you think that you'd be acting in the national interest by postponing it, or acting in the national interest by doing what you've done? Which one for you is in the national interest here? Just you've got a minute to answer that.
Firstly, this is not about MK party. It's about other political parties who also carry the will and the wishes of South Africans. Let's start there. So it must not be an impression that's created that it's MK party that's doing that. Secondly, what I want to touch on with that is that we are doing it in the best interest of South Africans. Because for far too long, things have been taken too nonchalantly, and boats just ending up in felts and waters and vehicles in places that we don't even know. But to answer another point, you can't have a quorum or parade until the National Assembly is duly constituted, of which then means you need a minimum of 350 and 400.
Okay.
As a max.
So right. I hear that part.
Sitting until that has been dealt with.
Okay.
In other words, there is no National Assembly until minimum of 350 members are sworn in.
Intlamulo, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Intlamulo Intlela. I hear that point about the 350 or 360. There's certainly been a different argument to that position, and we certainly pick up that conversation after 5. As it stands now, I understand the confirmation that at first sitting of Parliament for the 7th administration will take place on Friday the 14th, unless the MK party and whoever else is signatories to that would succeed in their interdicting the Concord to have that hearing postponed. Well, this is, after all, the National Pulse.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Well, we think we have issues in our country. There's certainly issues in France. The French President Emmanuel Macron, well, his decision to call a snap election after the right-wing National Rally, that's the RN party that is being led by Marine Le Pen, won around 31% of the vote in Sunday's European Parliament election. So what does all that mean, certainly to France and the direction of that country? Professor John Kircher is the former research director of the Department of Politics and International Studies at the University of Cambridge. Professor Kircher, I appreciate your time. Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Right. So, what has happened to France this weekend?
Well, you could take the result that you've just mentioned as being a great defeat for President Macron. And you could also see it as the rise of the radical right in France, which now sits at some 40% of the electorate, its highest score ever. So what President Macron has decided to do is take an enormous risk. He's decided to dissolve the National Assembly, hold elections, and see if he can win back a working majority in the parliament.
All right. And the risks are what?
The risks are that he is not returned a working majority. Quite the contrary, he is returned a National Front, Rassemblement National, radical right majority. And that would lock up the French Parliament, make it very difficult for anything to be done. President Macron of one political persuasion, his prime minister, he'd have to appoint somebody from the majority. His prime minister would have totally different views on so many things like immigration, security, Europe, a host of things.
Perhaps just take us back in terms of what has been the sentiments that has caused, his party to lose ground in that European election. That's forced upon him this call to have a snap election.
Well, this has been brewing for some time. The Rassemblement National has been making its politics around the idea that France suffers from too much immigration, that the European Union is dictating policies to the national government and to their farmers and to all sorts of citizens, and this is inappropriate, and that security is getting worse and worse in France. The number of murders has indeed increased quite substantially, has crime in general. So all of this has fueled the rise of the Rassemblement National, and this is where things stand. The reaction to yesterday's elections was really a reaction against President Macron's policies, which are not seen as sufficiently protective of the French people.
It certainly gets us, wondering about the daily workings of the French people again, and then you mentioned the point about certainly the Marie Le Pen's party about immigrants and people who've settled in that country, and this move towards creating a very French 100% French country, right? What does that say then about the broader direction of that country and its attitude to people who effectively they or their parents are born outside of that country?
Well, I suppose we have to put this in a broader context, which is the whole of Europe, or at least the European Union, and including that the United Kingdom as well, because the United Kingdom is suffering what it believes to be a large amount of unwanted immigration. And it is this which is getting out of control. The number of people arriving in France, for instance, is around about 200,000 a year on net migration. And this is considered far too much. The number of hospitals is not being increased, schools is not being increased, and taxes are going up. And there is a general sentiment that France's public services are suffering because there is not enough investment in any of the public services that need to be developed.
Okay, in 30 seconds, what's likely to happen at that snap election?
I think that President Macron has taken the wrong gamble. And I think that the Rassemblement National will get become the largest party. And that will mean that France will be in a real state of political chaos.
Okay, and we're talking France and not any other country. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Certainly got us thinking about that. And I welcome comments. Professor John Keicher, appreciate your time. 3:30. Let's get the news headlines with Madupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, the first sitting of the National Assembly has been set for 10 a.m. this Friday, following the determination of the first sitting by Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. Parliament says it has cancelled all flight and accommodation arrangements for MK party members after the party informed the institution that they will not attend the first sitting. And the city of Tshwane and Water and Sanitation have signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at addressing the city's water woes. I'll be back with a full news update at 4.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Good start across Gauteng highways. No major problems. A little bit of traffic just on the Mike 1 N1 north around sort of Santon and Allendale to a New Road, but no major issue there. Just looks like busy traffic conditions. There are some roadworks on Joburg's Mike 1 north running through to Smith Street, and that is quite heavy. Delays getting up from the Crown interchange area. Durban today, a crash scene before Spaghetti Junction, the N2 south backlogging from Umgede roadside. And if you're on the southern side of KZN, the N2 remains closed through Harding. There's been a crime scene there today, so right in the central Harding area, if you like, expected just to come off the N2 and be rerouted through the town centre. Police on the scene of that scene, and probably will be for a little bit longer. And then Cape Town today, some queuing pressure on Victoria Road. This is the coastal route between Buckhoven and Llandudno. There is a search and rescue operation underway. It's probably closer to Llandudno by the looks of things, but if you're moving between Cabs Bay and Hout Bay, just factor in some queue time and some heavy pressure on the N2 out of Cape Town today. Roadworks at Khayelitsha, one lane open after Muway. Traffic heavy right back to Airport Runway side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Become such an important part of our sporting lives, you tell me.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Yes, we talk all things VAR because Bafana coach Hugo Broos has joined the calls for the use of VAR in the remaining 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers after South Africa's hard-fought 1-1 draw against Nigeria on Friday. Broos urged CAF to use the technology given what is at stake in the qualifiers. The share of spoils left South Africa in fourth spot in Group C with 4 points from 3 matches, and they are below surprise leaders Lesotho, Rwanda and Benin, with Nigeria and Zimbabwe in the bottom half.
Sometimes, or maybe for this kind of games, I think we need a VR. It's too important. It's too important. And we saw it on AFCON, and it was a good thing. Because there were some decisions that you saw after the show on VAR that it was not right or it was right. We are playing for World Cup qualifiers. And I think that in such a competition and for such important games that we need VAR. We need VAR. We need that.
Well, he's not the only one calling for VAR. We've also heard Zimbabwe calling for VAR, and I think he makes a valid point because any wrong decision, it means that your team might not qualify for the World Cup. Anyway, talking about Bafana, they face Zimbabwe tomorrow in Bloemfontein. Meanwhile, Pitso Mosimane believes that the criticism of forward Percy Tau is quite unfair and unjustified. The critics from Friday's games follows from the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations, where Tau came under fire for his performances as the national team ended third in the tournament. But Mosimane feels that the player doesn't deserve such treatment.
We need leaders. We need this kind of players. We're talking school now. We're talking education. That's what we need. When you support talent with the principles of life, of success, you are bound to have a good product. Okay? We can say anything like, okay, he missed a goal, a ball that we said he should have scored it and we could have won. Yes, I saw it also myself. It's a fact. But I'm saying to you, is that all we see?
Well, moving on to cricket, the Proteas go into their clash against Bangladesh today, knowing that a win will all but seal their spot in the Super 8 stage of the T20 World Cup. They play at New York's Nassau County International Cricket Stadium again, so they will use their experience of playing on the tricky pitch when they face Bangladesh today. Bangladesh last played at the venue in a warm-up match on the 1st of June, and a win for the Proteas puts them top of Group D, which is called the Group group of death. And that match gets underway at 4:30. In boxing, Filipino boxing legend Manny Pacquiao has confirmed that he's negotiating a comeback fight at the age of 45, and he'll be facing Mario Barrios. Pacquiao is the only 8-division world champion in boxing history with a career record of 62 wins. Of those 62 wins, he has 39 knockouts, 8 losses and 2 draws, and has not fought since his loss in August 2021. The Filipino star added that if negotiations come to an agreement, the fight would probably be staged around November or December this year. Then wrapping up with women in sports, I cannot hail record-breaking Gerda Steyn. Her winning the Comrades yesterday was her 3rd ultramarathon record time of the year, and as we know, she smashed her own Comrades marathon record time by nearly 10 minutes, finishing at 5 hours and 49 seconds. She's the 5th woman to win the race thrice. She won it in 2019, 2023, and now 2024, and she says that she hopes her win will inspire the next generation.
I hope that something like this will be inspiring for young athletes and for older people as well, not just young athletes, other people in other professions, to go after difficult things and to make a success out of it. And with that thought in mind, that's how I'm going to approach the Olympics. I want it to be an inspirational story at the end of this year, and to me that means a lot. If I know my performances is not just for me, it's not just to enrich my life in one way or another or to bring some happiness. It is for me. It needs to be shared, like I said earlier, and that's how I'm going to prepare and line up for the next.
A big congratulations to Gerda Steyn. I mean, we're in June. She's already broken 3 ultramarathon records.
Amazing, isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah. And I think she's a late starter to running, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
right?
She is, yeah. She definitely is, and she keeps going. Now she says she's focused on the Olympics. I can't wait to see what she's going to do.
Look, that's marathon as opposed to ultra-marathon, right?
Yeah.
And there is a difference, because it's almost like it's a speed race,
Yeah.
relatively. But I hope she does well. I mean, I really...
Crossing fingers. And she's absolutely humble. I was trying to get her for today, but she was like, I'm very tired. So understandably, hopefully we'll get her soon.
There we are. Well, I mean, it does leave us with this, and it's something that I brought up in my That's My Point intro, which is the value or the impact of the Comrades race on South Africa's global nation brand, how the nation is perceived around the world. One of the features would be the Comrades Marathon.
Absolutely. The people's race for a reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So there we are. That's one of them. All right, that's it. We'll talk again in an hour's time.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
What are your thoughts about coalition choices?
We said we are open to talk to everybody, including the MK party. And it's very difficult to talk to people there because when you talk to them, they tell you that they are still waiting for Ubaba.
Anyone seen
Ubaba?
Have you seen him? Have you seen him?
And Ubaba gatholakala.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, I gave you my That's My Point show opener about what makes South Africa great, and certainly I welcome your calls, welcome your comments, and you can call in 086 000 2032 and then WhatsApp voice notes or text 0614, no, let me get that right, 06114 104 107, 0614 104 107, what makes South Africa great. You can also tweet it out as well, looking at people, businesses, institutions that really make us a remarkable country, in spite of the problems. I don't want to hear that. I'm just saying, if we don't give ourselves a shout out, who is going to do so? So we already spoke about the Comrades Marathon, for example, as an institution. I mean, that's one of them that's absolutely magic. Right, Parliament, we know now that first sitting, notwithstanding the challenge from the MK party and others, will happen on Friday, this Friday, the 14th at 10 a.m. Right? Let's get calls. Tommy in Cape Town. Hi, Tommy.
I'm in Greytown, in KZN.
Oh, Greytown, not Cape Town.
Yes,
absolutely not. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
My apologies. Go ahead, Tommy. Yeah.
Yes, no, I wanted to make my comment on the issue of the first sitting that South Africa is underpinned, constitutionalism is underpinned by the rule of law. So everything that we do should be prescribed in terms of the law. So the results were announced by the IEC as per the law. Within 48 hours, they then designated members in terms of those who are elected as 400 members of the National Assembly, and within 14 days, they must be actually sworn in by the judge president. So you can't then postpone what the law prescribes on the basis that you are holding a contrary view. I think there's a precedent, Ashraf, on the matter. The IEC, the fact that the IEC declared the elections as free and fair, regardless of the fact that MK submitted some objection, it is indirectly they are saying those disputes are immaterial or those disputes are frivolous. So if the MK is not happy, they must not bark on the wrong tree and then say the sitting must stop. What they must do, they must go to an electoral court which is designated to deal with the people who are aggrieved if they are not happy with what the processes of the IEC.
Well, I mean, that's what they're saying they've done, whether it's the IEC or then the actual court. And this is now a next step around it. Up to now, they've just said they've got issues around vote rigging and fraud. They haven't given us details, but clearly, if you heard the conversation today with Intlamulo Indlela, he said something that I've never heard before, where he said specifically IT people who worked for the IEC, he's got voice notes of them when the whole computer system got shut down at the IEC Results Center, about talking about how they're going to fiddle with the numbers. That's what he claims. Now, to be fair to him, if that is substantial, then that could be a case to talk about. But I've also made the point that, even if it's 1% of the vote or 0.5%, how does it change an entire election? Tommy, I got your point. Thanks for that. Let's get another call from Vivian. Vivian in, is it Paddock? No, Vivian Paddock in KZN, right? Vivian, hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, you need a gold star for trying to bring something positive to the call-in shows and talk about what makes South Africa great.
Well, thank you. I believe in that very strongly, by the way. For example, you may have heard about France and, they've got magic, they've got the Eiffel Tower, they've got problems. If we just heard the conversation we had, every country has got some serious issues. So we must, if we don't shout out for our country, who is going to do so?
Absolutely. But there is, for obvious reasons, quite a lot of negativity, whether it's Kathy's show in the morning or Stephen's or yours, But so as I say, a pat on the back to you for raising
Listen,
this.
anything I can do to build this country into a champion nation, I would do so. And I mean, exactly. But you're also right. We have to reflect the mood of the nation, and often the mood is about the issues we have to raise, and we do so. Is there anything else you wanted to say very quickly, Vivian?
Yes, there is. The cardiac surgeon you were trying to think of is Chris Barnard,
Of
and
course,
it was
yes.
1967.
There we are.
And what I really wanted to say, there's a group down on the south coast called Walking in Nature, and for the last 2 months, they've been walking on a Sunday morning from 8 until about 12. They do between a 5 and a 7 kilometer hike along the beach, and everyone takes a plastic bag and pick up all the refuse on the beach. So it becomes quite a jovial community thing with people turning out, and there's anything between 80 to 100 people that turn up at a time. And everyone just walks at their own pace along the beach and cleans up the beach. And I think that kind of thing, apart from the Trevor Noahs and Elon Musk and Chris Barnard, that kind of community spirit is what we need more of, where people get together as a community and attend to their environment.
Absolutely. Well, okay, I'll leave it at that only because we're out of time. Not only do we need, I think there's a lot of that already. What we need more of is amplifying just that, which you've done. That People need to know there are remarkable communities in this country across the length and breadth of our nation, and we need to amplify the work that these remarkable communities do, like you've just mentioned, out on the beach in the Cape. Vivian, thanks for your call. Let's get on to other issues in the city of Johannesburg. So we know load shedding hasn't happened. You see, that's another example. Doomsday scenario, load shedding will happen on May the 30th. It didn't happen. It didn't happen on the 1st of June. Now, we like 10th of June. It still hasn't happened, but there's a but, okay? Load shedding is instituted by Eskom. But the city of Johannesburg, well, they have now implemented load reduction in certain areas in the city of Johannesburg. So what does that mean? What's the difference? Huse Moleshe was the managing director of Rubik, an energy advisory and consulting company. Huse, I appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
All right, help me. Load shedding versus load reduction. What's the difference?
Load shedding is a centralized, so we have a system where we have generators of electricity, which is a power plant. They generate a specific amount of electricity, and then on the end user side, we have demand. So when the supply side meets the demand, we are happy. But when there's an imbalance, we have a high demand and you don't have enough on the generation side, then you have load shedding. And that is a centralized system throughout. So when it comes to metros, the municipalities, they get their power, most of it, from Eskom. They buy it from Eskom. It's transmitted through large power lines. And then they have their own network, which is a distribution system through which they supply their own users. Now, the city is having issues with respect to their distribution infrastructure, which is not sufficient. But from an Eskom point of view, the supply is there, sufficient, can be transmitted to them, but then there's issues with their infrastructure. They attribute it to theft and they attribute it to overload, over demand. I can also attribute it to probably not enough maintenance.
All right, but here's the thing, right? Whatever the causes may be, whether it's theft or infrastructure breakdown, you mentioned the point that one is centralized, which is Eskom, I would gather. That's the national distributor. Then, of course, you have regions, right? So in this case, the city of Joburg or City Power, right? But at the bottom line of it all, does it still not mean the same thing? Which actually means that whereas in a normal situation you could switch the lights on 24/7 if you choose to, load shedding means you can't because somebody else will switch the lights off for you, and load reduction also means you can't because again somebody else will switch the lights off for you. So that means you don't have that 24/7 choice.
So load shedding would mean that there would be rationing throughout the system. Everybody on a rotational basis would have to switch off at some point. What this means, it's confined to a particular metro or municipality, if I can call it that way. A city of Tshwane is not going to do the same thing just because there's issues there. So it means that the substations that are owned by City Power are having issues in terms of taking on all of that demand. So it's at a localized level.
Okay, I hear you, but my point is this, that I hear it's localized. So in this case, it's only the city of Joburg. But the net impact to a consumer is the same, no matter whether it's national or whether it's localized. That means if they want to switch on at a certain time today, and if the City Power in Johannesburg decides to switch off, they don't have that option to switch on. That means there's load shedding in place. Never mind, it's called load reduction. It is load shedding.
It is not load shedding. The net effect is the same for those affected communities, and they are specific. For instance, some of the users within the city of Joburg will not be affected at all. It depends on the areas that have infrastructure issues or whatever the demand may be. It's not everyone. And they've listed the areas that will be affected.
Okay, got it.
So yes, the net effect to that individual is the same, but it's not going to impact everybody.
Okay, got that. Maybe it should make us feel better. I don't know. Let's talk about this then. Are you surprised overall how long we've continued without load shedding? I say within inverted commas because there's been many people who outrightly said this is not true. It's not going to, by May 30, this will change.
I'm not completely surprised because when the new board at Eskom came in, they had an 18-month plan, which they indicated to us, and we all said that's probably. Their plan was with respect to maintenance of the infrastructure, which they have been doing uncompromisingly. If you compare the period before and the period after they started, you will see that there's significant reliability maintenance that they've been doing. Also on the supply side, remember that at the time we had some of the 3 units of power plants within Ekusile that were completely off, and that's 800 megawatts each. That's almost, you can multiply that. Also significantly on the unplanned breakdowns, you've had improvements. One of the areas I can say may have been impacted by the politics was obviously on the National Treasury side, relaxing the PFMA requirements so that they can quickly be able to buy the infrastructure they need. They also have had that taking over of the debt of Eskom, which allows them now financially to be able to do things quite quickly. Okay. But there is significant work that they've done. You can look at the numbers from the breakdowns that were just random. Those have been reduced quite significantly.
Thank you. And I think we need to acknowledge that, absolutely. So in spite of, as we've said, load shedding or load reduction for the city of Joburg, effectively the net result is the same. Overall in the country, we've had nowhere near the load shedding that we expect for over almost 3 months now. So thank you for your time, Jose Moleshi, the Managing Director of Rubik, which is an energy advisory and consulting company. We have a podcast of that conversation up, as well as the conversations we've had earlier on, particularly with that of Nhlamulo Ndlela, the MK National Party spokesperson. Check it out on the SAFM website. Let's talk to the ANC Youth League right after this.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so there's not a day now there's a party pronouncing on something or the other. I mean, I've heard the Al Jama party saying that they will certainly not be part of the government of national unity, particularly referencing the DA to suggest that the DA's position with regard to Gaza in Palestine, in that Palestine-Israel conflict, absolutely is something they do not wish to be part of, not with the DA, not at all. So that's their view. There are others as well. So what about the ANC Youth League on a range of issues around the government of national unity? Well, Colin Malachi is with me, the president of the ANC Youth League. Colin, appreciate your time. Hi.
Yeah, thank you for the invite.
Thank you. Now, I understand you've got some very need to be repeated views on the ANC generally, on its position with regard to the government of national unity, but particularly around your oft-repeated position of being a party, a very non-racial party. So go ahead and tell us.
Look, one must first acknowledge that South Africans have not given the ANC majority to govern. We happen to be the largest party because of them who got more votes, but we don't have the 50+1 to govern alone. Now, what we've resolved upon is to invite all political parties that agree on the nation-building program, but also agreeing to resolve the socio-economic challenges facing the country. Most importantly, to agree that we must restructure the economy to benefit the majority. And on top of the agenda, what we've been punished on is that our economy was unable to create enough jobs for South Africans. That's why there's high level of unemployment. Now, we invited all parties that will agree to that principle to come and join us in the government of national unity. And that is our position. Now, what we're anti a lobby of groups of people who are saying that the so-called black parties must unite to form a black government. That is against the ANC values and principles.
Okay, so which parties would that be?
Look, we've heard a lot of black parties. We've heard of MK say that. We've heard EFF say that they must form what they call the black bloc, something like that, something foreign,
right?
In South Africa now. The ANC has not fought for so many years for the total liberation of our people, to unite our people as South Africans, to later on divide them. That is against our values. If the ANC would rather be out of power if it has to participate in a program that divides South Africans. Because ours is to unite South Africans beyond one objective of one nation.
All right, I hear you. So here's the important part, right? If some parties are suggesting that they will not form part of the government of national unity if the DA is there, because, to put it mildly, they see the DA as being slow on transformation. Some call them downright racist. There's different opinions about that, right? That's on the one hand. So they would rule out working with the ANC because if the DA is part of it. Now, you made the point about the Black Alliance, right? If you were saying, and I'm going to quote you directly, we are not going to participate in some divisions called the black-only parties in South Africa. That's not what the ANC fought for. Now, that line, I think, will please many people who are there for the premise of a non-racial South Africa. Practically, does that mean that the ANC would rule itself out of any coalition with the MK and the EFF themselves?
Look, we're trying to educate them, because the dangers of participating in the so-called black bloc, the next thing that is going to happen in the country, they're going to move from racial discrimination, they're going to move to tribal discrimination, then they're going to move to regionalism. Then they're not going to have a country, and we can't participate in that. Now, that's our content, and we want to engage them, because we want them to retreat from those issues, because they can't be political parties existing in South Africa. Over 30 years of democracy later, we still have parties who speak like that. Now, ANC as a leader of society, part of the responsibilities we have also is to educate, to call them in and educate them that that is not what it's supposed to represent. You must differ on policies, maybe if you feel differ, but the main objective is to build one South Africa. Now, I think it's unfortunate that we still have parties that think that way. If the EFF and MK don't want to agree to the nation-building program of the African National Congress, I don't believe the ANC must go in any government with them, including the DA. If the DA is appearing to be a racist organization, they can't form part of that. We'd rather be in opposition branches or not govern. We're not going to be desperate for power at the expense of South Africa.
Okay, so practically, I hear what you're saying. Practically, therefore, what's likely to happen then? So, for example, let's take the two parties first, the MK party and the EFF. That means, if I take what you're saying, that you, from the ANC Youth League side, will certainly suggest to the ANC president, for example, to say, we cannot participate. Is that the official line of the ANC then, that you will not participate with parties that push the black bloc agenda?
Yes, no, we're not going to be for part of that. They must redeem. If they're doing that full, they must move away from that if they want to join the government of national unity. The government of national unity's objective is to build one South Africa. It's not a government that must divide South Africans. That will be reversing our gains to them, and the ANC can participate in that.
But I'm saying, is that the official position of the ANC? That means, will the ANC then withdraw an invitation to those two parties?
That's what the ANC exists for. It's not an individual position. The ANC exists for that. It exists for nation building. It exists to build a non-racial, prosperous society.
Okay.
That's what the ANC exists for.
So I take it.
It's the goal of the ANC.
All right. So if the ANC has withdrawn its position or invitation to the let me get that right. Its invitation to the MK party and the EFF because of their perceived pushing a black bloc or black alliance, does the invitation to the DA still exist? Is that still open?
The invitation is not withdrawn from anyone. We're saying anyone who wants to join with the ANC on the nation building program, on the government of national unity, they need to agree to those principles, and that is where it starts. And I think anyone who will be working with us will be agreeing to those principles. Now, we're saying that everyone must move away from dividing South Africans according to racial groups and tribal groups, because South Africans have gone through a lot. They can't afford to be subjected themselves to that again 30 years later. We're saying that the ANC is not desperate to a point where it's ready to move away from its values and principles so that we hide power at all costs. South Africans have not given us majority to govern. They've given us a largest party so that we unite all South Africans behind the agenda they believe in.
All right, so here's the last thing, right? I hear what you're saying. So you did say you need to educate them. So if they're not going to be learning from the level of education, then at that stage, you'll part different ways. That leaves you with very little options in terms of who to be part of the GNU. But here's the last thing for you to consider. The same parties that are pushing a black-only bloc, right? They would say they are doing so in response to the ANC's rather slow position of transformation of the country. That means the paperwork of the constitution of the ANC is highly honorable around non-racialism, but the practicality of, and I've used this example before, why do our townships look like townships and not like suburbs? That reflects a very, very slow snail's pace rate of transformation. How would you respond to that in 30 seconds?
Maybe that's a new discussion we must have. That is a progressive discussion. If the discussion is about transformation and the restructuring of the economy of the country, I think we agree there. I think it's a main fundamental principle we agree on, that we need to fast track that. It's an area where I believe that we've not been moving at the pace that we should be moving on. And I think it's a discussion we can have on. And South Africans have punished us on that because they felt that we are moving slow on the restructuring the economy to benefit majority of South Africans. That is a discussion we can have with them, because that is a building discussion. That is a discussion that
serve the interests of South Africans. Now, any part that comes with language, the ANC must listen to and say, let's work together to resolve that.
Okay.
But also, it is not true to say that the ANC in the past 8 years has done nothing. We've put on policies that benefit a lot of black people, the triple PE, the affirmative action, NHI.
Okay. Colin, we're going to have to leave it there. We're on to news time. I think, to be clear, it's not like the ANC has done nothing, but they've certainly needed to do a lot more, and I think that's the issue, that the rate has just not crept up with the expectations of a nation, and I think that's completely understandable. Colin, maybe another conversation, as you've said, Colin Malachi, the president of the ANC Youth League. So much to consider from that conversation. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock with Madubi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf Garda. The top stories: the National Assembly to sit for the first time this week and moves to address the water challenges in Tshwane. A very good afternoon. Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has announced that the first sitting of the National Assembly will take place on Friday morning. This will be the first sitting after the elections in which no party received an outright majority. Parliament had earlier announced that it would not be making travel and accommodation arrangements for the 58 members of the MK party because the party indicated to the institution that it is boycotting the sitting. All other elected members will be sworn in. During this sitting, the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and the President will be elected. Parliament earlier said that it had cancelled all flight and accommodation arrangements for MK party members. Spokesperson Moloto Mothapo says they take note of the MK party's dispute regarding the election results. The party has also indicated that it does not view the first sitting as constitutional. Mothapo says, in light of this official communication to Parliament, they've decided to make some cost-saving decisions.
The parliamentary administration is in the process of making arrangements to provide travel and accommodation for all members listed by the IEC as handed over by the Chief Justice to attend these sittings and the associated onboarding activities scheduled in Cape Town. In light of the MK party's express decision through their legal representatives not to attend the first sittings, Parliament has cancelled all arrangements for accommodation and flights for the party's elected members. This measure is to avoid incurring fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
A collaboration by the City of Tshwane and Water and Sanitation will see them working together on areas such as infrastructure development and water resource planning. They have signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at addressing the water woes in Tshwane. The Metro's residents, especially in Hammanskraal, are still battling to access clean drinking water. City spokesperson Lindela Mashiko says the water challenges have negatively affected the residents.
The other 3 areas of collaboration that the MOU will focus on include water resource planning infrastructure solutions in line with the city's climate action plan, benchmarking of programs, that is green drop, blue drop, and no drop, joint enforcement programs for water pollution prevention, amongst others. The signed MOU reinforces the ideal of Intergovernmental Relations Act, which implores a concerted effort by government in all spheres to work together and to integrate as far as possible their actions in the provision of services.
The Oudtshoorn municipality in the Little Karoo says mopping up operations are continuing following flood damage to the town and the surrounding areas last week. Several roads were flooded and there were rockfalls. Many residents were also cut off by the raging rivers, which are starting to recede. Municipal spokesperson Hans Visser says motorists should continue to exercise caution on the roads.
We can confirm that all main routes from Oudtshoorn to other towns are open. The only exception is the road through Meyringspoort to Beaufort West. Meyringspoort is still closed due to extensive damage to the road surface there. The Provincial Roads Department is currently busy repairing the road, but it's not certain when that road will be opened. In Oudtshoorn itself, there were 8 roads closed due to floods last week. 4 of those roads have been opened.
And International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor says South Africa stands ready to work with the new BRICS members. She addressed the BRICS Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting in the Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod. Pandor says the bloc is an important global platform and urged member states to maintain momentum across all pillars of cooperation. Some of the new members of BRICS include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Kaelisha Kumalo has more.
International Relations and Cooperation Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor kicked off the address by paying tribute to the late Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, the late Foreign Affairs Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian, and they died in a helicopter crash last month. Pandor also updated her BRICS counterparts about the recent elections in South Africa, saying this was the most competitive election since the dawn of democracy in 1994. The minister also says Pretoria is preparing to assume the G20 presidency on December 1st, 2024. Kaelisha Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The top story this hour, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has announced that the first sitting of the National Assembly will take place on Friday morning. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemele.
Coming up in your sports, the Sawa nominees confirmed for URC Player of the Season and Proteas all set for Bangladesh. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Roadworks today on Joburg's Mike 1 going northbound around Smith Street. That's unusual. You will sit in some pretty heavy traffic through the double-decker backlogs into the Crown Interchange. R21 out of Pretoria to the airport, queuing up again today at Clayville. No change as we enter a new week in terms of the roadwork disruption there. Make sure you've got an extra 20 minutes at least to get through. Durban, a breakdown on the N2 southbound at Spaghetti Junction and the roadworks. Traffic slow all the way back through Inanda Road. N2 at Harding remains closed in the central Harding area. That's as police continue to deal with an earlier crime scene from this morning. And Cape Town, if you do the Howe Bay run between Llandudno and Buckover, there was some big traffic jamming up there due to a police operation with stop-go controls. My system now looks like the traffic's flowing. It looks like that incident is cleared. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Tell you what, I know where I'm going to be
You're
Friday
listening
morning.
To the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I tell you what, I know where I'm going to be Friday morning at 10 a.m. That's the date of the first sitting of Parliament for the 7th administration. That is, unless, the MK party succeeds in interdicting the Constitutional Court to prevent that first sitting because of a whole range of issues, particularly around what they call, vote rigging, and they believe they've got the proof on that one there. Right, so we'll touch on that. You may want to just comment on the conversation I had. That conversation is up as a podcast already, including that conversation about the city of Joburg, no load shedding, load reduction, but confirmation effectively to that community of Joburg, it means the same thing, You can call it whatever it is that you like. We'll chat to Lawson Naidu after 5 regarding that first conversation about the MK party. And later on, Dr. Tebe Kalafeng, who'll talk about the impact of the comrades on South Africa's global brand. Exactly the conversation I had in my opening. That's my point. I will take your calls. I want to take it. I need to get your WhatsApps as well. And we'll do that as soon as we can. Let's get another conversation around the issue of this election. The IEC, we know this, they've had various legal challenges, well known from the MK party and a whole lot of others as well. But what about the challenge from an organization called the Holabon Renaissance Foundation? They also believe that first sitting of Parliament should not happen. They in fact believe they're calling for that final result to be declared null and void. What do they really mean? Bonshitswer Motopeng Mseleng with me, the chairperson of the Holabon Renaissance Foundation. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So have I heard that correctly, that you are calling for that final election result that was declared free and fair by the IEC, you're calling for that to be declared null and void?
Indeed, you're correct.
Why?
Because of the IEC has failed to discharge its statutory obligation. And in okay,
yeah,
now,
carry on.
Let me clarify this. IEC, before it announces or it declares elections that are free and fair, or declares the results, it must first and foremost address the objections and be able to investigate and resolve the objections before it declares the results true and fair. That's the first thing. In terms of Section 55, it says if the voting station has there's an objection on the voting station, and some of the votes might partially be accepted or declined, or the entire vote at that voting station can be declared, not included into the results based on the final recommendation or final findings. Now, instead of doing that, there are 597 objections, which constitute on average about 2% of the voters. All right, if we have to look at VD, if we are looking at the VD, to say per VD, this way 579 VD objections. Now, they constitute about 2%. 2% in any province can change the directive or the direction of the voters, of the outcome of that province.
Let me move on very quickly. Let me move on. So I hear what you're saying, right? Now, you know that you're not the only organization. There's been political parties who've called for the same thing, right? Have you taken your stance or your position A to the IEC or the Electoral Court or any higher body?
In fact, we are talking, HBR is speaking from experience. In 2014, we saw physically, we were at the data center and capturing center. Physically, myself, I was there also, where we witnessed rigging of votes. So in our report to IEC, we then indicated that there is rigging at this place in the data capture and auditing space in that space. And we are requesting that let there be political parties and observers being allowed. Somehow we went in there by mistake, by default, and we're allowed to go in by default.
Okay,
right?
but I mean, did you object this time round? That's what I'm asking. Have you observed rigging this time round?
Okay, this time around, what we've done is that even prior to the election, we even wrote to the IEC requesting that even where we know that votes are going to be rigged, it is this stage of data capture and auditing. That stage, that is where it is only IEC officials. And we wrote to them requesting that we also want to be part of, to observe that space, and also requesting political parties to observe that space. IEC refused. Now, the South African...
But I mean, wait, there's been party observers across all the voting districts, and there's been other independent observers. I know that.
No. Look, I'm talking about where you do data capturing. Data capturing is only IEC. I can tell you now.
Yeah.
You can ask any political party. They are not allowed at the data capture. And data capture, that's where the results of the VD are not the same as the results that are being captured. Number two, the results which are captured are not the results at the VD station.
But my understanding, I just want to get clarity. My understanding is at the voting district, before everything is sealed, all the political parties, they sign a form, they know the numbers, they take photos, all that gets sent out. That means before it leaves the district, right? Even if there's an error at the data capturing side later on, they already have recourse. So if they know 1,000 people have voted in this district and the data capturer puts 100, they have recourse because they've actually got the facts with them.
You see, you and me, we agree. Now, the South Africans today were very smart. They were able to take photos of what has been captured at the VT station, for example.
Yeah.
And what is in the system of the IEC is totally different from what political parties have captured. In fact, there has been fraud where signatures have been forged, which are not the actual signatures of party officials that have signed at the voting station. And IEC, by declaring those elections, they condone that fraud and rigging that has happened in the IEC. And they've been doing that for years.
All right. Now, one thing I hear what you're saying, right? in terms of you lodging these complaints, what has been the IEC's response to you?
No. Ourselves now, when we launched this, first when we launched in 2014, we launched it as a report, as what we have observed as observer.
Right, okay.
In 29, and then they did not come back to us. In various committees where we've been invited, we've been raising this issue to say, you know what, there's this thing that is happening at the IEC during this period where, in terms of data capture and auditing, that space there, that's where corruption is happening, that's where rigging is happening. And we can't tell for which party, because these are IEC officials. All of them are IEC officials. Only IEC officials that are allowed in that space.
Fair enough.
Now,
yeah. All right. Can we just get to the end here, just from a, because of time constraints? Here's the thing, right?
Yes.
I hear what you're saying, right? Now let's assume that the IEC has not responded, as you've said, right? And you've talked about maybe 1 or 2%. They have declared the election free and fair. There are clearly some irregularities, and I think irregularities happen across voting booths across the world, right? You know, do the irregularities materially change the outcome of the election, not just nationally, but all 9 provinces? If they don't, right, is it a bit drastic to call it not free and fair, and therefore it needs to be declared null and void?
You see, if the IEC had done its work, we will not be sitting where we are today. Now, but because of the IEC was in a rush to even declare the election, even with all the objections that are there. All right, that indicates that the IEC that we live in, the IEC we have, is failing on its statutory obligation by even allowing ghost voters to vote. They're ghost voters, meaning at the total number at the VT station is 1,000 rand. It's 1,000, sorry, but the voters that are captured on the system is 3,000. Now it's far more than even what the VT people have voted. So they are ghost voters. Now when every vote, what we are fighting for is that every South African has a right, and those that have voted, their right must be upheld and must be included.
Okay, here's the last thing. Do you find, are the IEC, one of two things? Are they complicit, as in actively involved themselves in vote rigging, or are they simply inefficient, and therefore a lot has got away from them without even their knowledge? Which one is it?
Well, firstly, I said earlier on that in 2014, when we were observing the national election in 2014, we physically saw IEC officials scoring apart slips and putting new slips with new signatures. Physically, we saw it. And when we raised it to the country could not, the people in the country were not awakened. Now today, South Africans are awakened, are able to see the truth that we've been raising. They said IEC officials are corrupt. And in fact, they are the ones who are bringing the country into disability. In fact, what they are doing is that it's called, it's not only that it's not about forgery, but it's treason. Because they are here to uphold the electoral and democratic principles of the country. So what we are calling for is not something new in Africa. Okay, in Kenya, in Malawi, we've seen where the Concord in those countries called for a re-election or a presidential election. So it's not something new that we
all right, I got that. But you're saying at the end you'd hold the IEC to treason, if I heard that correctly.
You're correct.
Okay.
In fact, the commission or the commissioners must be held liable. In fact, they must be charged for treason.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Bonshitswe Motopeng.
Yes.
Msileng, the chairperson of the Holabon Renaissance Foundation, another organization very unhappy with the issues of what is seen as voter fraud or voter rigging that took place in our election, May 29. The fact, is it material? Is it not material? Would you go the route of declaring the entire election null and void? Would you go the route of the MK party and perhaps some others with them as well who are calling and interdicting, they've already done that, in fact, interdicting the Concord to the position where that they do not want to have that opening sitting of Parliament, which now we know will happen Friday at 10 a.m. So much to consider. That's why we say, what drives the national pulse? Well, I think we know the answers every single day, but perhaps you can answer that too. Let's just change tack, because I asked the question about what makes South Africa great, and let's look at the positive issues. And yes,
Hi, SAFM, and to all the listeners, Luann here from KZN. I think what makes South Africa amazing is our ability to bounce back. No matter what's been thrown at us, we have been able to bounce back. We get back on our feet and just carry on going. And we still have an amazing sense of humor. We find the ability to laugh.
Perhaps I should laugh as well. Well, there you are. We find an ability to laugh. I get that. Here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm Chakas. I'm in Craddock. One thing that makes South Africa great from a foreigner's point of view is the patience of business in South Africa. Whenever fuel prices increase, they don't rush to increase their prices in shops. They take time, unlike in other countries, they increase immediately.
Okay, well, now we know. You see, there we are. There are lots of things that we have to compare ourselves to other countries. Lots of things we're unaware of, right? Here's another.
Hi, good day, Ashraf. Very nice topic you have today. What makes South Africa great? I think having basics in place for the people of South Africa so that they can move forward with their lives. Things like running water, open the tap, there's clean water coming out of the tap. That makes South Africa works. When it's dark, you can switch on the light. There's electricity. There's power to brighten every corner. That makes South Africa great.
Well, there you are.
And also, if you drive around your suburb, then the streets are clean. That makes South Africa great. Thank you, Ashraf. Jonathan from Cape Town.
Thanks, Jonathan. Enjoyed the call, accepting that I think not everywhere has got clean water. And that's one of the big problems that we have in the country, right? Certainly not. Okay, let's do this. I'll pick out some of the other voice notes, lots of them about what makes South Africa great, then about the election issues that are still cropping up, and about the MK interdict, as well as now we know that 7th administration will get kickstarted on Friday. With the election of the president as well, this coming Friday, unless something happens. So let's talk about the something. There's lots of somethings about many other issues that we must consider. By the way, this is Youth Month, so Youth Week. We'll look at the issues, some important issues around youth and the economy coming up pretty shortly, right? But you may have heard about this over the weekend. Corruption Watch filing a notice of withdrawal against Brian Molefe. We're going to talk about that right after this.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
So what about Brian Molefe, one-time boss of Eskom and Transnet and many other organizations? Well, last week, Corruption Watch filed a notice of withdrawal against Brian Molefe to be declared a delinquent director for the alleged violation during his tenure at Eskom. Molefe, you may remember, was accused of state capture during the Zondo Commission led by Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. So the matter is between Corruption Watch as the applicant and Eskom Holdings, Molefe and other executives. So what does this really mean now? Impo Molefe is Brian Molefe's lawyer and attorney at Molaba Attorneys. Impo, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Good day, Ashraf, and good day to your listeners.
Thank you. Help us understand what has just happened.
Yes, in 2018, Corruption Watch launched an action in terms of which, amongst others, they wanted Brian to be declared a delinquent director, meaning that he's not going to be able to hold directorships in companies and other institutions. The matter dragged on until last week, Friday, when Corruption Watch withdrew their application against Brian. They also withdrew against the other respondents. But that is where we are now. Eventually, they probably realized that their action is without merit, and they withdrew.
Does that surprise you?
No, we are not surprised. In actual fact, when we read the papers, we realized that these people are clutching at straws. You can't depend on social media posts, depend on what has been said in the print media, and think that is going to be the basis of your case. And also depend on, people who have been discredited, who have contradicted themselves in other places, and think that we are going to succeed with an application against someone to declare him, as a delinquent director. No, we were not surprised.
So what happens next to him? I mean, I certainly have had the privilege at the time to have interviewed him a long time ago in my previous stint at SAFM, highly regarded business leader at Transnet at the time. Then he moved on to effectively bail out Eskom. Then you have the situation of him being implicated in state capture. I mean, for all intents and purposes, a reputation that's been severely damaged, right? Does this mean that he gets out of it in a far better position, or is it a case of if, what, and maybe?
Look, this matter has affected him negatively. He could not get, employment in other places. For instance, he could not pursue, the profession of his own choice. He has studied law now. He wanted to practice law, and all of a sudden, his registration was blocked because there is this matter pending, and well, of course, the others are also pending. So all this has affected him negatively. Of course, his reputation has also been seriously damaged, and we will be looking at possible actions, against the people who made these false allegations against him.
And who would be those people?
Well, it's a couple of those whom Corruption Watch depended on in terms of their action. We will be looking at them.
Okay. Just help me understand this. Did Corruption Watch give a clear reason as to why they've withdrawn the case against Brian Molefe?
Well, not to us, except that they felt that this matter has been dragging on for too long. That is what they said to us. The matter has been dragging on for too long, and they think that they should withdraw the action, provided we agree that each party is to pay its own costs. They didn't give us reasons, but I see from other media platforms that they are saying that their papers were badly drafted, and that maybe they should have waited for the Zondo Commission to conclude before they launched this action and so forth. All that, is not acceptable. If you launch a serious action against someone for declaring that particular person a delinquent director, you must be certain about your facts.
So, but here's the thing: they would launch the action to declare him a delinquent director on the basis of him being implicated at the Zondo Commission. So, has those implications been dropped, or just their own personal case?
Look, the Zondo Commission, we are at the moment busy with a review of the Zondo Commission. We are in actual fact of the view that the whole report is not what the paper it is written on. Many other people are taking the Zondo Commission on review, and we believe that we will succeed. So if it is on the basis of the Zondo Commission, that is going to be a very, 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 very weak reason as well.
Okay. When would we know finally, in terms of your next step, about possibly charging those that effectively whispered in the ears of Corruption Watch?
Now, we will announce in due course. I can't give you timelines now. We still have to consult with senior counsels and so forth. So we will announce, but it will not be, within the next few hours or the next few days, but we will announce.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it. I appreciate you giving up your time. Impo Molefe, who is Brian Molefe's lawyer and attorney at Molaba Attorneys. So what do you make of that situation? So Brian Molefe certainly came across as a stellar business leader, right? And then so much happened in terms of his own career, just unraveled in like state capture. And like, here's the man in charge of Eskom, and look at what he's done, and he's made a mess, and he's made some money, and question. And now Corruption Watch in particular filing a notice of withdrawal against Brian Molefe to be declared a delinquent director. What does that mean to Corruption Watch, to Brian Molefe, to the Zondo Commission, to the issue around state capture? What else for you has been unanswered? We still need to know further questions. You can tell me. As always, you can connect, WhatsApp, text or voice notes, 0614 104 107. Always happy to connect with you on air. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 4:30. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has announced that the first sitting of the National Assembly will take place on Friday morning. Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis has condemned the barbershop shooting in Khayelitsha, in which 4 people, including 3 children, were killed. And President Cyril Ramaphosa will not attend the G7 meeting in Italy later this week. And those are your headlines. A full news update at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
We have a crash on the M1 South in Joburg. It's just down by the William Mandela exit to 4 ways. Traffic quite heavy from Buccleuch interchange side. Not sure if it's related, but William Mandela from Bryanston going up to the highway on your way to 4 ways is quite a heavy backlog as well. Roadworks on the Mike 1 at Smith Street. Unusual to see that this time of afternoon, but it means a queue from as far back as the Crown interchange. In the N1, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, slow going this time of afternoon from Buccleuch right through to the Samrand Road exit. Eski and Pwllheli, heavy leaving Pretoria, queues all the way to the mighty Mopani Highway. And Durban, the N2 South breakdown at Spaghetti Junction, that has been cleared out of the way. That traffic busy, but moving better than it was earlier. And Cape Town, the Victoria Road situation between Buckhoven and Llandudno has been sorted out. Stop-go controls have been lifted, and that traffic flowing normally again. M5 is probably the heaviest highway around Cape Town. Queues from Cuba get a change to Racecourse Road, and already under pressure getting into Mitchell's Plain. R300 jamming to AZ Berman. There's roadworks on AZ Berman as you come off the R300. That whole route's going to be busy for the next couple of hours. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Minister of Sports. To me, what's the big stories?
All right, we start things off with the T20 World Cup this time around. The Proteas won the toss and they elected to bat first against Bangladesh this afternoon. SA know that a win will all but seal their spot in the Super 8 stage of the tournament. Victory will cement their spot at the top of the Group D, which has the likes of Netherlands, Sri Lanka, Nepal and Bangladesh. They currently have the most points on 4, and just looking at their score right now, obviously they just started now at 4:30. South Africa is sitting on 6 for no loss, and Quentin de Kock and Hendricks are at the crease. Will definitely keep you up to date with the score there. Then in rugby, Bulls duo of Kurtley Arendse and Cameron Hanekom are up against Emirate Lions versatile Sanele Nohamba for the coveted United Rugby Championship Player of the Season award for 2024. The Gauteng-based trio garnered the most votes in the nomination process, with Springbok head coach Rassie Erasmus, the 4 South African franchises and local media selecting their star players of the season. The winner will be announced next week, Tuesday, as part of the series of Vodacom URC awards for the season. Then in football, it seems that Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti are not on the same page, especially when it comes to the Club World Cup. Ancelotti was quoted saying that Madrid will reject the invitation to play in the competition, saying that the compensation to play in the tournament does not make sense at all. Ancelotti says that playing a single Real Madrid match is worth around 20 million euros, while qualifying to play in the Club World Cup brings 50 million euros as a minimum. And then there's bonuses based on the results of the club, with the winner walking away with around 100 million euros. So according to Ancelotti, that's not enough for a big club as Real Madrid.
For a tournament of one game, yeah.
Yeah. And, well, now Real Madrid have now sent out a statement saying that they're distancing themselves from those statements made by the manager, with an official statement from the club, and also saying that, listen, it has not been a question to them. They will participate in the Club World Cup. Then in netball, Free State Crinums, Carla Pretoria says that she's impressed by the level of of the Telkom Netball League. Pretoria is playing in the TNL this season after returning from illustrious spell in Australia. The TNL started with 10 teams when it was established in 2014, but it has now been expanded to 16 teams, and Free State now boasts 2 teams in the competition, with the Free State Sonoblomo, who are added to the roster in the 2023 season, and they compete in Division 2. Then finally, in the business of sport, I'm looking at the richest club owners in South Africa, and coming in at number 5, it's Jomo Sono for Jomo Cosmos, and he is valued at around 20 million US dollars.
So wait, this is so you're talking football, right?
I'm talking
club
football.
owners,
Club
right? Okay,
owners,
fine.
yeah.
But is this owners in their own right, or owners like the richest clubs? Not necessarily the same thing, right?
No, not the same thing. In terms of them as chairman and the businesses that they have, but somehow
He's still in
coming
the
back to
KFC
football.
business. He was in the KFC business before.
Jomo?
Yeah.
I wonder.
That's where he made some money, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, he's valued at 20 million US dollars. Ivan Koza coming in at number 4. He's sitting at 35 million. Kaiser Motaung is number 3 at 60 million, while Patrice Motsepe, who owns Mamelodi Sundowns, well, not anymore, he's sitting at 2.3 billion US dollars. And at number 1 is Johan Rupert, who owns Stellenbosch FC. He's sitting at $9 billion.
Okay, so and then Sundowns. So who owns it now? His son? Is he?
His son.
Okay.
Supposedly.
It's called number crunching. Okay.
Well, with that said, it's a wrap from my side. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumin Kapele.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, let's pick out lots of people commenting about different issues, and let's pick out some further voice notes. Here's one on MK and the elections.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Jose here from Mpumalanga. If the MK party is so worried about one voter, what about those signatures of theirs? And the signature that they apparently forged on somebody else's resignation. What about all those things? They're so hell-bent on one little thing. How about those little things that are not so little? Thank you.
Okay, you've made your point. Here's another on MK.
Hello, Ashraf. It's Makaula and Manfred. I regret, Ashraf, to vote for the Umkhonto party. I didn't know that this party belongs to Jacob Zuma. And this all, the purpose for him to register this party is to evade his trial, corruption trial. He's just using us. No. I regret doing so. Even if there is a re-election, I'll vote for ANC again. I'll go back to ANC. Jacob Zuma has used us. He's still using these people, these comrades who are voting for him. Shame on them. Thank you.
Okay, well, you're saying such interesting things. First of all, Jacob Zuma, as far as I'm concerned, he's still part of the ANC. He's a member of the ANC. I know that sounds contradictory. That's the one thing. But, you said that I didn't realize that, like, he owns the MK. Why would you not know that? I don't mean who owns it. Like, why would you not know he's the head? I mean, his picture was on the ballot sheet. He's a key member of the MK party. So why would you not know that? The next point in terms of why he's running MK, I mean, I'll leave it up to you to decide what his motives are. But why would you not have understood or read or followed up in terms of what they were planning to do as an opposition to the ANC? They still call themselves like the real ANC, and the ANC, as we know, it is Ramaphosa's ANC. They've been very clear. And then you've already committed to voting for the ANC. Well, that's fine for you, but I'm just going to suggest give yourself a couple of years. It's not going to happen for another few years, so don't make any promises now. But here's the thing to all of us, right? Are you in a position where whoever you voted for in this election, May 29, are you also like that caller that you already regret voting for that party? Are you that person? And if so, let me know. Do you regret voting for the party that you voted for? And why do you regret voting for that party? I certainly want to know. Let's talk markets now. Makwe Masilela, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. In fact, we'll get to him in a moment.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, so Makwe Masilela with us. Makwe, good chatting to you. I understand you've got some important results you want to share with us, right?
Yeah, afternoon to you and to your listeners. We are starting with Oceania. Remember, these are the fishing and food processing guys. Strong performance, Ashraf. Revenue up 12% with strong pricing across all products and mainly fish oil. And the profit as headline earnings per share up a whopping 85%. That was driven by the US-based Daybrook delivering record first half earnings and the Lucky Star pleasing performance following improved second quarter canned food sales volumes, and Daybrook itself, they managed to capitalize on higher fish oil sales volumes at record US dollar prices, and the interim dividend was up 50%, and Lucky Star will continue with their strategy of increasing volumes through relatively affordability and availability in the constrained consumer spending environment. And we've seen that the total allowable cash for Pilchard in South Africa was increased by 67%. And Omnia, these are the guys that manufacture and supply chemicals to the agriculture, mining and chemicals industry. Strong cash flows, improved margins and sustained profitability despite volatile market conditions and declining commodity prices. And we've seen the chemical sector was also impacted negatively by tough trading conditions in South Africa. And as of these results were driven mainly by the exceptional performance from mining segment, which saw a substantial international growth and strong volumes achieved when it comes to mining and agriculture, which partially offset the impact of declining prices, but their revenue was down almost 16%, and that was due to falling commodity prices.
Okay, and then you have, as always, the local and global markets?
Yeah. This week, all eyes will be on the conclusion of the U.S. Central Bank meeting on Wednesday, where rates are likely to be left unchanged. And we've seen the non-farm payrolls data on Friday that indicated that the labor market, which is one of the considerations for reducing interest rates, remained strong, and market participants started to scale back their bets on a September rate cut after that data. And also inflation data, which is also due on Wednesday, in the US is also a biggest consideration when it comes to altering interest rates, and the European Union vote outcome is also weighing on market sentiments, as there was been gains when it comes to the far right in the European Union parliamentary vote, which weighed negatively on the euro and the bonds falling. Oil prices making a comeback, and that's after falling to a 4-month high lows. Falling to 4-month lows. That's ahead of more clues when it comes to U.S. interest rates. And also on Tuesday, we'll be getting what we call a demand forecast out of OPEC. Brent crude is up 1% at $80 a barrel. And after a sharp sell-off on Friday on stronger than expected U.S. job data, the yellow metal is steady. Is waiting for that U.S. Central Bank rate decision on Wednesday. We see gold is up 0.5% at 2,304. Platinum is up 0.4% at 974. The DAX is down 0.6%. CAC down a whopping 1.8%. FTSE down 0.4%. The Dow and S&P, they are all flat, and the JSE itself is down 0.7%. And the rand firmed a little bit, firmed to 0.4% against the US dollar. Is now at 18.80 and 23.91 to the pound and 20.19 to the euro.
Okay, and that's it for the day. Good chatting to you as always, Makwe Masilela. We'll have another update coming up in just under an hour's time. Right, let's get to some of the callers, and let me remind you, I love the fact that we have some serious original thinkers here. I'm not suggesting that I must tell you how to think, not at all, absolutely. But one of the great things of being an anchor on this platform, and I've been asked about it, is like, what a privilege to speak to the nation. What a privilege to speak to people who are activists who are conscientious about where they are in the country and where the country needs to go. And even if we often differ about many views, these are people, that is, with strong opinions, and that for me is a huge privilege. Okay, let's get to call. It's KG in Pretoria. Hi.
Evening, Ashraf. How are you?
Good, KG. Good talking to you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Ashraf, madness is when you actually attain 14% of the national polls. Not even 48.9 or 49.99. Not even 40, but 14%, and then you claim to have won the elections. Now, yes?
You're talking of the ANC, right? Here.
I'm talking about MK.
Sorry, you said 14. Okay, got that. I didn't hear you. So 14 as opposed to 40. Okay, they got 14.
No, 14.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no. I would understand if someone claiming who won 49.9 can claim that he won the election, he was with them, but you can't be claiming you won the election. We don't even get to 20% of the national polls. And then I have a question for you, Ashraf.
Yeah.
If the numbers had turned, the voting results, if they were the other way around, if the DA got the ANC numbers and the Freedom Front got the MK numbers, do you think we'll be talking government national unity, or there will be a coalition between the two?
I think it's difficult to say. I mean, to be fair, because look, let's start with what we have now. Even the current government of national unity, which by my understanding, a coalition would be a coming together of parties, different parties with similar ideologies, who say, look, we'll stick around together for this purpose, okay? That's a coalition. A government of national unity, I think by its very nature, are parties that are very, very different. For example, ANC and the Nats in the 1994 election, that comes together for purpose of national unity. Now, we also know, as you've heard, conditions from other parties already making big conditions to the ANC. And if you heard the ANC Youth League leader that I spoke to just now, he's also very clear that they've got conditions and they won't be party to parties that push for a black bloc, okay? Because they're a very non-racial party. That's the ANC in everything they do. So to answer your question, I don't know. I mean, I think it would be just wrong if I suggested anything, because I don't know. Because the DA, yes, they would have needed. Well, let me put it this way. Maybe here's the easy way. If the DA got 40, I don't know the maths. I don't know what their pact would have given them. But I think that pact that they've had, which includes other parties, as you know, that signed up before, and like the IFP, I think it is, and many other Action SA certainly as well, would have given them very close to 50 then. So then they would not have needed anything else, but they probably would have just got over the line to get to 50, incredibly so. But they fell short, and everybody else fell short.
But then why is the ANC of Ramaphosa not doing the same with other small parties that are like-minded? That to me leads to a conclusion that some theory that I've heard from some guys a couple of years ago saying Ramaphosa is actually a stooge for white monopoly capital. I'm inclined to believe that because it doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. It's something I asked at the IEC with one of our one of the analysts we had, and the truth is, it's possible if the number gets up to 50. That means 50 plus 1 without the DA, without the MK, without the EFF. That must be 50 plus 1. Now, whether that adds up, I think IFP would be one of them, right? So it may well just add up. The problem I think that came through from what I was told was that to manage a coalition with so many small parties, like 5 or 6 of them, right, across the national and provincial, is incredibly difficult. And if the parties within the coalitions have a fight and that coalition breaks off, then you actually have a restart all the time. And by the way, I'm living in Joburg. I know exactly what's happened to the city of Joburg because they've had exactly that. We've had a DA-run coalition. We've now got an ANC-EFF-run coalition, and they put Al-Jamaa in as the leaders because the two parties, EFF and ANC, can't agree on who should be the leader. They don't trust themselves, so they put a party with 1 or 2 seats to run the city of Joburg. And that sort of thing will happen. Okay, I need to move on. I think you've raised some important issues there, but I have another point on that. Maybe I'll talk about that later on, KG. Thanks for that. Let's get to another caller. Indu in Bloemfontein. Hi.
Afternoon.
Yeah, good talking to you, Indu. Right, go ahead.
I'm just dealing with the issue of this Youth League president,
Yes.
He raised the issue of race. I'm just checking. I went back and checked all the speakers who are raising actually a disagreement with this issue of DA and the ANC coalition or government of national unity.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a single speaker, including Melin Sulu, who ever mentioned the race. So this boy here, I think he's trying to raise something that is not there. He's positioning himself to be the next member of a certain board of white monopoly capital. These leaders of the ANC, especially the young ones, these aspiring leaders who want to be ministers, they always say these things in the public platform, but behind closed doors, they know very well what they are trying to push and trying to promote. They want to be fine, they want to have money, they want to sit in these boards, and then these white monopoly capital will then fund them. Not even a single speaker who said DA is a white party or whatsoever. People or speakers who were against this DA-ANC collision, they were specifically saying DA is not agreeing ideologically with what we are trying to do as black people or as black parties. Issue of transformation, even way before election, Ashraf, DA went to a public and said EFF is enemy number one.
Yeah.
They said they will never work with MK party because it's a radical party. Even way before ANC could lose elections and come to this government of national unity. So it's dangerous for a young person who's supposed to be leading young black party. I want to check in his NEC right now. How many white people are there in his NEC of the ANC youth league? If he's so strong about the issue of non-racialism and all that. It's dangerous for these young people because they say these things. They are therefore availing themselves to be captured by this white monopoly capital, given position in certain boards, and then tomorrow will come and lead the same ANC who is today we are complaining that ANC is captured by big business and white monopoly capital. These boys are availing themselves of such things. So I'm warning Malachi.
But you're warning him, okay? Got that. But I don't know where this is going to take your warning. I think for me, the big issue is, I mean, I've certainly heard the EFF making pronouncements about being part of a black bloc. May not use the exact words. And I've heard the MK saying something similar. And I've certainly heard the points you made about the DA, about what they call, that doomsday scenario, doomsday coalition that includes the EFF and the MK, that must be stopped at all costs. But then I've also heard the point you just made from the ANC Youth League leader. And what I'm interested in is his point to say, he's saying that they will not work with parties that are for the black bloc. And my question to him was, and he said, yeah, maybe, will they actually then rule themselves out? Will the ANC say, we will not deal with those two parties? And if they don't deal with those two parties, then who will they deal with? Those things will be answered pretty quickly if, as we understand it, we go to Parliament to vote for a president on Friday, as we now know. Thanks for that. Thanks for that call, Imdu. As I said, love the fact that we get thought-provoking calls. Agree, disagree. They're always thought-provoking. Right. It is Youth Month. Youth Day comes up on June the 16th on Sunday, as you know. And part of that is a feature we can run for the entire week, looking at 5 of the biggest, most pressing issues that affect South African youth right now. And very importantly, how do we address and resolve those issues? One of them comes up in a moment that we will talk about. And we'll talk about one of those issues right after this.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
And you can obviously guess which is the number one issue. It's got to be the high youth unemployment rate, isn't it? From youth, it is so high. Statistics talk about a 45% unemployment rate among young individuals aged between 15 and 34 years old. That's a devastating number anywhere in the world. And I must tell you, for those who are more critical of other parties and less critical of the ANC, and I'm certainly not here to support or not support another, it is very difficult for the ANC to defend that position. And that's why perhaps they find themselves in the position they are. So with that in mind, let's talk about Youth Day and Youth Month and the big issues around youth with Bonga Makanya, who's the chairperson of the South African Youth Economic Council. Bonga, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Afternoon, Ashraf, and afternoon to all the listeners of SAFM. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So, Bonga, firstly, you do agree, with those numbers that, whether it's 45% or 41%, either way, the numbers are absolutely devastating for youth between the ages of 15 to 34, isn't it?
Yes, of course. I think for a sustained period of time in South Africa, we've been in a permanent crisis of youth unemployment, and whether the number is 40 or 45%. Fundamentally, what it means is that millions of young people are not in employment, and there's even a more scary number, which is 3.5 million young people who are neither in employment or training, who are sitting at home doing nothing. So I think fundamentally we've got a crisis of young people sitting idling outside of the strategic sectors of the economy and are just simply not participating. And whether it's 40 or 45%, the fact of the matter is that a large, vast majority of young people in this country are left to themselves.
How do you think we got ourselves into that position?
Well, I think for one, it's been years of sustained austerity measures by the government of South Africa in not deploying enough resources to make sure that it reaches the most vulnerable. So I think government could have embarked on a large fiscal spend aimed at specifically tackling the youth unemployment crisis. For example, we've got an entity called the National Youth Development Agency in South Africa. It's one of the least funded entities in government, yet it's the entity that is responsible for youth development, and one of its key focus areas is employment and job creation for young people. So that entity, having received such little funding compared to huge entities like IDC, NEF, FIFA, it really limits the powers that entity can actually drastically transform the lives of young people. So government austerity has been a central figure in terms of those numbers. More resources could be deployed to the Department of Women and Youth, which is also the least funded department. But also fundamentally, we've got a structural problem in the economy where the private sector, which actually employs the most amount of people, if you look at a labor force of about 15 million people, about 14 of them are employed by the private sector. So we've got a private sector that year on year records massive profits if you look at some of the JSE-listed companies. But when it comes to redeploying capital to investing in new industries and investing in new asset infrastructure, which will result in job creation, the private sector is simply not reinvesting into jobs. They would rather declare large dividends for their shareholders, who in the main are probably foreign shareholders, who the money then goes out of the country.
But I mean, you talk about the private sector. Do you think that's the case? I mean, I certainly see in my understanding of private sector a huge emphasis on employing people, upskilling people, ensuring that they are incubated to create the type of leadership that the company needs, because many of them are completely switched on in terms of the shared values that are required, between a business and their profits, but also in uplifting, society.
Well, I think, yes, largely it is the private sector. I mean, I make an example, for example, in the Beggy years where South Africa recorded year-on-year growth in terms of the economy. There was lots of economic growth, and there was a lot of upswing in the economy. However, unemployment rate in South Africa was still sitting at around 30%, which is incredibly high compared to the rest of the world. So for a country where the private companies are actually doing quite well, and by well, I mean, if you look at their annual reports, you look at their profits and losses, many of them are recording massive profits, even though the economy is quite bleak. So those profits can come back to reinvest into job creation. But you find the private sector in South Africa being a bit more risk averse. They're being a bit more hesitant in redeploying and reinvesting into South Africa simply because of what they call a policy uncertainty, political uncertainty, and all sorts of terms that they come up with to kind of shift the blame onto government. But anywhere in the world, a large majority of people who create jobs, it's the private sector. There's nowhere in the world where the government creates more jobs than the private sector.
Isn't it a reflection of maybe a disconnect? Isn't there a reflection of a disconnect between government and the private sector and just communities? Meaning there's a need to be completely innovative, but central to that is there has to be growth in the economy. If companies, large or small, can't afford people, they're not going to hire them.
Of course. I think, again, what's driving the lack of growth is the austerity measures deployed by government. I mean, we just heard the Minister of Finance last year saying that they want to cut government spending, they want to reduce the budget deficit, and they want to reduce the debt to GDP ratio, which, I mean, of course, sounds good on paper, but what is the point of government running a budget surplus when there's dire need of government services in the country, where a country, any developing economy in the world doesn't need, for example, a budget surplus. It's not a necessary economic indicator of anything. What a government in a developing nation needs is massive fiscal spending to ensure that you're stimulating aggregate demand, and that aggregate demand will then turn into economic growth. once the private sector sees that the government is also deploying resources into demand and deploying resources into communities and infrastructure, they will also follow. So, in fact, in any developing economy, the government plays a central role in coordinating growth. So our government has taken a strategic approach of being more averse and deploying austerity measures and cutting spending, which is not good for a developing economy.
Okay.
It's not good for an economy that is looking to grow.
Let's leave it at that, because it does mean lots of finger pointing and maybe a relook at what our strategies and priorities are as we start the 7th administration. Friday, I think, maybe. We'll see about that. Bonga Makania, the chairperson of the South African Youth Economic Council. We're going to chat to Lawson Naidu after the news around that challenge to that Parliament's first sitting. Coming up, let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greco's.
Thank you and good afternoon to you, Ashraf. First National Assembly sitting set for Friday and power restored to the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. Good day to you. Chief Justice Raymond Zondo announced that the first sitting of the National Assembly will take place this Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning. This will be the first sitting of Parliament after the 2024 elections, in which no party received an outright majority. Parliament had earlier today announced that it would not be making travel and accommodation arrangements for the 58 members of the MK party because it indicated to Parliament that they're boycotting the sitting. All other elected members will be sworn in. During this sitting, the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker and the President will be elected. President Cyril Ramaphosa will not attend the G7 meeting in Italy later this week. South Africa and other African countries, as well as the AU, have been invited to attend the meeting as these industrialized nations are trying to reach out to the continent. Ditaba Sotetsi reports.
The outcome of the national and provincial elections in South Africa saw a major political shift after the governing party, the ANC, failed to get an absolute majority that will have enabled it to form a government. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has since announced that his party was engaging other political parties with the aim of forming a government of national unity. The world is watching with keen interest as South Africa tries to navigate these uncharted waters. This has led to the South African president prioritizing internal challenges. Ramaphosa will not be participating in the G7 summit, nor will South Africa send a high-powered delegation to the Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland.
Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis has condemned the barbershop shooting in Khayelitsha on the Cape Flats. 4 people, including 3 children, were killed when gunmen opened fire on the barber. He says the crime may be linked to local extortion syndicates.
Deepest condolences to all of the families of the children who were killed in the Khayelitsha barbershop shooting. We pray for your strength and peace at this time, and also for justice as swiftly as possible for this brazen and ruthless crime. It was clearly well organized, well armed, and undertaken by criminals who at this stage do not fear the police at all. This situation must change by ensuring arrests and convictions in this crime.
Friends and neighbours, as well as the Northern Cape's moral degeneration movement, have joined hands in trying to raise funds for a Kimberley mother. She lost her 4-year-old daughter in a shack fire this weekend. Neighbours who tried to help the 2 girls who were home alone at the time of the fire, so they couldn't reach the child who'd hidden under the bed trying to escape the flames. The woman's 7-year-old daughter, who survived with minor injuries, is in hospital. The father, Tebogo Kwate, is the children's father.
I went to the hospital to visit my surviving daughter. I asked how she felt, and she said she was aware her sister had died, and she was aware due to her condition she won't make it.
Power has been restored to the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital in Parktown in Johannesburg after 2 days without power. City Power says the distributor tripped as a result of a faulty breaker affecting areas including Parktown and Berea. City Power spokesperson Isaac Mangena.
A team was dispatched to basically work around midnight to basically work on the repairs, and supply was fully restored. The hospital provides an essential service of healthcare to the public and is, according to the regulations, supposed to have backup systems to run its operations until power has been restored. We engaged with the technical head at the hospital about the outage and advised them to basically use alternatives which will assist them until the repairs were completed and power is restored.
The medical charity Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, has given details of an attack on one of the last functioning hospitals in the besieged Sudanese city of Al Fasher. The hospital was stormed by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces on Saturday. The medical charity's Maximilian Kowalski.
2 cars with 7 soldiers stormed the facility and opened fire and looted it, including stealing on an MSF ambulance. Luckily, at the time of the incursion, there were only 10 patients and a reduced medical team, as MSF and Ministry of Health teams had already started transferring patients and medical services to other facilities earlier this week.
The top story: the Chief Justice has announced that the first sitting of the National Assembly will take place this Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goos.
Coming up in your sports this hour, the Proteas in early trouble with 4 wickets out already after 5 overs. A call for VAR in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers, and nominees confirmed for URC Player of the Season. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very busy around the Fourways area today. It's a collision on Winnie Mandela Drive, on-ramp to the N1 to go north. So if you're coming out of Fourways, approaching the highway, it's busy. If you're going in from Bryanston, it's super heavy. Delays up Winnie Mandela towards the highway. They start just after Grosvenor Crossing, and just generally all over that bridge system. So if you're trying to get off the highway, north or south, you're under a bit of pressure as well. Just nearby, no lights on a couple of junctions on the main road, top end of Bryanston up towards Lone Hill, including Main and Vidcop. And so a lot of disruption up there as well. Couple of routes heavy going north today. The N3 from Germiston up to Galulis looks like a problem as you come off the N3 onto the N12 east inside the interchange. And the Mike 1 north roadworks at Schmidt Street, backlogging traffic still through Crown interchange. Durban's M7 away from the Bluff out to Pinetown. 2 queues, one at Bel Air Wakesley, another as you line up the hill towards the Belleville Road exit in the Queensborough area. And Cape Town, the R300 into Mitchell's Plain is heavy. There's roadworks as you come off the R300 and turn down onto AZ Berman. AZ Berman is a very heavily congested route this afternoon, and you're struggling to get off the R300 and turn into it. That's why that traffic heading into Mitchell's Plains backed all the way through the N2 and back in towards the Delft area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megaliters of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The Trilidor Ultimate Big Blue Sale is now on. Get amazing discounts on the best security South Africans trust. With over 50 franchises across the country, you can always find a security expert near you. So call 0861 Trilidor or visit trilidor.co.za today. Terms and conditions apply.
One outfit will walk away with sad faces when Bakaga clash with Amatats. They both feel it is time to go back to the PSL, but they must deliver football intelligence on the field. Who belongs to the top league of Ipola Lasemzansi, Bakaga or the Students? This is the Premier Soccer League promotional playoffs. Baroka FC tackles Pretoria University FC on Wednesday, 12 June at 3 p.m. live on SABC3 and SABC radio stations. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Welcome to round 3 of the 3-round National Pulse every single day, and weekday that is, of course. And certainly the question to you is, what drives the National Pulse today? Well, it's been the issues of, if not load shedding, load reduction in the city of Johannesburg. It certainly has been the issue of the MK party and beyond that, and their challenge to the first sitting of Parliament. And it's been confirmation that first sitting of Parliament will happen on this Friday, June the 14th. I've asked people to give a shout out to where they are, and there's some regulars who do that. Brian Makushe is listening from Pretoria. Manu Tabele saying we are together. And Turdius saying we are together from Mashamba Bushi Park, Lara section. Sipiwe's got his South African flag saying we are together as well. And Tanyani from saying just SFM, good afternoon. Another one, good afternoon, listening. Tefu, listening from Bloemfontein. Love the shout outs, and you can do the shout outs via WhatsApp as well. Just text us. It's probably the easiest way. 0614 104 107. I will get to further calls as well in a few minutes' time. But let's pick up on that issue of MK, because it's certainly an issue that we can't ignore. Now, you know that earlier on, the MK party instructed his lawyers to urgently seek an interdict from the Constitutional Court to postpone that first sitting of Parliament. So with me to get another take on that issue is Lawson Naidu, the Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, CASAC. Lawson, it seems like we're talking once a week at least. It's a good chatting to you once again. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, now let's go back to the conversation I had with Ndlamulo Ndlela, the MK Party national spokesperson. I put it to him when we spoke earlier on as to why the action that they've taken. This is what he said.
We are obviously finalizing the submission on an urgent basis to the Concord. We had to wait for the process to unfold, which is to engage with the Secretary of Parliament to understand. As to, are they willing to shift the date in lieu of the situation at hand, which is an urgent matter that needs to be looked into, because in effect, it then leads to the National Assembly being constituted, unconstitutionally.
Okay, so
we are now raising papers, submitting them with all the evidence, to request that the Concord put in abeyance the sitting in, the swearing in of the president, until, as part of our papers in the second form, the evidence that has been presented is taken into consideration. But also, let's not forget that for Parliament, or the National Assembly in this case, to be duly constituted, it needs a minimum of 350, a maximum of 400 members.
Okay, that's the gist of their argument. So, Lawson Naidu, yes, you pronounce on this just about every day of the week. I gather that. What do you make of this latest move, effectively to ensure that first sitting of Parliament does not happen by MK?
Yeah, well, Ashraf, I think it's quite, the Constitution is quite clear that the first sitting of the National Assembly must be convened by the Chief Justice within 14 days after the declaration of the result. Now, we had the election result declared on the 2nd of June, the Sunday evening, and there's 14 days for that first sitting to be convened, which has now been established by the Chief Justice, will be this Friday, the 14th of June. The request from the MK party, appears to have no basis to stop the Chief Justice or the National Assembly from proceeding with that sitting. They're saying they're unhappy with various things in terms of how the IEC dealt with the objections that they raised to the election results and so on. But that, in my view, does not give any legal basis either to the Secretary of the Parliament or to the Chief Justice not to follow what the Constitution dictates, is that this sitting must happen within 14 days. And the second point that Mr. Ndlela makes is around the number of MPs that need to be present. Well, I'm afraid his interpretation of the Constitution is incorrect in that regard. The Constitution is quite clear that a quorum for an ordinary sitting of the National Assembly to take a decision such as the election of the Speaker and President is 1/3 of the members of the National Assembly, which is 133 members. The section of the Constitution he appears to be relying upon deals with the electoral system and the fact that the National Assembly is comprised of between 300 and 400 members.
Okay, so you're very clear on that point, that 1/3 is sufficient, right?
Indeed, that is clear in terms of the section of the Constitution that deals with the various quorums for sittings.
So in our earlier chat again, he stood his ground and said it's 350, and I said, look, let's move on. You've got a different view. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Let's go to the issue of, so you're saying in terms of the rules that there has to be that first sitting within 14 days, and that's why we're complying. I think so it'll be 12 days on Friday because the 14th day would be on the Sunday, and then you have Monday being a public holiday. I get that. But are there not exceptional circumstances to change that? And is there issue, because they're talking about vote rigging and they say they have proof of that. They're talking about the type of proof where IT people within the IEC, that means IT people working for the IEC, when those when that scoreboard went down on that one morning, they've got some sound bites, voice notes of them commenting about how they're going to change the results, and that for them is what they're saying is materially different and therefore has to be addressed.
Well, Ashraf, the issue here for me is if such evidence exists, then that evidence needs to be placed urgently before a court of law. Because it's one thing for the MK party to be saying that they have the evidence. In the absence of them producing the evidence, I don't think there's any basis for anyone to postpone the sitting of the National Assembly. These are serious allegations, and if they're true, then we face a serious situation. But that evidence needs to be placed before a court so that they can make a determination as soon as possible. But until such time, no papers have even been filed as yet. So they really cannot be a basis to upset the constitutional order in the absence of that and in the absence of a court actually making a declaration that evidence is proof of electoral irregularities.
Okay, so I think last week when we spoke to the MK representative, it's like, we can't tell you, we will tell the courts. Now they've indicated that they have presented it to the courts. I'm really not sure where that stands, because I hear what you're saying about if it is that urgent and that paramount to where we are, then, it has to be addressed ASAP, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. I'm not aware, Ashraf, that they filed papers with the court as yet. If they have done, then of course they will have had to make that evidence available to the court. And once it's been made available to the court, it will be public knowledge. But we will still, even if that has happened, we will have to await a determination from the court. Again, neither Parliament nor the Chief Justice can rely on untested allegations in order to make such a critical decision as delaying the first sitting of the national.
Well, that is one of my points to say. Let's assume that there were irregularities. And these things can happen in any election in the world. You then look at the relative percentages, right? And even 1% or 2% in the greater scheme, if it doesn't change national results and doesn't change the 9 provinces, then there's really no issue. Their argument is like every single vote counts. And the counter to that of me is like, you can't have an election every time because there's one vote in question.
Indeed. And I think the assessment from the Electoral Commission was that the elections were free and fair and the outcome was credible. And on that basis, they were able to declare the results on the 2nd of June. Now, there were many hundreds of objections that were made to the Electoral Commission. They went through all of them. I think some of them resulted in a recount at certain voting stations.
Yeah.
It appears on the face of it that the Commission has done all that was required of it. They've dealt with the objections. And if those parties that have objected remain dissatisfied, then they have every right to pursue those matters in court.
Right. Now, 2 parts of that, and the MK spokesperson did say it's not just one party, but many parties, right? So, okay, either way, it wouldn't affect the 1/3 number of people seated at that first sitting, right? But there's been this constant call against the credibility of the IEC. Once again, it's been repeated just about every single day since election day, right? What do you make of that?
Well, I think, Ashraf, if we look at this, these allegations seeking to undermine the integrity of the Commission have been happening for several months now, and not just since the election on the 29th of May. They've been going on for a long time in terms of seeking to undermine the credibility of the commissioners, the staff of the Electoral Commission, and suggesting way before the election got underway that it was not going to be free and fair. So I think, the Electoral Commission have been under the spotlight. And, from the information that I've seen, they dealt with the objections in a thorough manner, went through all of those objections before they declared the result. So, in the absence of firm evidence, one cannot simply rely on rumor and innuendo to suggest that the elections were not free and fair. Okay, now
here's the final thing. Let's assume that the MK party and the other parties have actually submitted to the electoral court, right? And let's assume that they've discovered or uncovered certain things that are hugely troublesome in the next couple of days. What then happens next?
Well, again, the Constitution, there is a provision in Section 49, subsection 3, which says that if a court declares the result of or sets aside the result of the election following a process such as this, then a fresh election has to be called within 90 days thereafter. So that is the remedy that ultimately exists. But in the absence of a court making that determination, there's no basis to say that the elections were not free and fair.
All right, and finally, so we have the first sitting of Parliament. We have all the MPs sworn in as MPs. We have a president elected, and thereafter, maybe a week later, there's some evidence that suggests that there was something dramatically wrong. Can that still then be reversed?
Yes, it can, because the court can set aside the result of the election if there's sufficient evidence placed before the court, and the court is of the opinion that the result of the election is not accurate. It does not constitute a free and fair election, and then that election result can be annulled. Okay, so it's not a case of Friday over, finish, and clear. That may well continue beyond that. Appreciate your time, Lawson Naidu. Thank you so much. Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. And the bigger thing around that would be, what are the implications to South Africa's national brand? And we talked to Tebe Kalafeng, not about the elections, about other things, including the Comrades Marathon.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so let's talk about the Comrades, not the way you do it from a purely sporting point. So I'm certainly not going to ask Tebe Kalafeng to comment on the winner of the men's race and the ladies' race and what they did and whether their pacing was correct, not at all. But the implications of the overall Comrades Marathon in terms of how he's seen globally, because as you know, when I opened the show, I asked the question about what is it that makes South Africa great? What are the things that we do? People, places, businesses, institutions that carries massive national or international brand value for South Africa. So we do have Tebe Kalafeng with us. Tebe, appreciate your time. Hi.
Good afternoon. Good evening. What time is it? Good day.
It depends which part of the world that you're sitting in now. So if you're in Melbourne, then maybe it's good morning, maybe like just past midnight or something along that line.
If I'm anywhere else, it'll be in my continent. I'm not in Europe. Good evening, Ashraf.
Yeah, well, Mr. Brand Africa, so there you are. So, Tebe, let's talk about it. The premise I've put down is the Comrades Marathon as an institution has a massive impact on South Africa's global nation brand. And we thought the best person to answer that would be yourself.
Well, I think no question about it. I mean, if you look at the past 30 years of South Africa, some of the ideas, the events, and the initiatives that have put South Africa at the top of the list are definitely sporting events. And the Comrades is definitely one of them. And that's how people have been able to form an opinion about South Africa, whether it's South Africa winning the Rugby World Cup 4 times as a competitive nation, whether it's South Africa staging the Football World Cup in 2010 as a country that is capable, or whether it's the Comrades, which is called the ultimate human race. It says South Africa is an incredible country that stages some of the best events in the world.
And in your experience, and of course you've traveled extensively, I know that, do people look at, we're talking sport, but it could be something else. Do they look at an event like the Comrades and then link it to just what makes South Africa pretty special? That means that link between the race is never in isolation. It links back to the country and the nation, Brand.
Well, events are one way in which a country builds its brand. It's one way in which a country attracts people to come to the country. And when they do come into the country, they then get an insight into the country. So whether you come here for a conference, whether you come here for a sporting event, whether you come here for a political or for a business meeting, when you get here, that experience that you have with South Africa forms, or with the event at South Africa, forms a perspective or perception about how you look at South Africa as a country. South Africa as a capable country, South Africa as an attractive country, as a country where next time you won't be coming for an event, you're coming for a leisure tourism. Next time you'll be coming here to invest. Next time you'll be coming here to move to South Africa. Of course, that's how you look at events.
But also, sometimes you have a situation where you're aware of an event, but you actually don't necessarily attend. Like, for example, people would be aware of the Comrades, but not coming here in the same way I'd be aware of the Qatar, football 2022 World Cup, but not actually going to the event at all. But I'm aware of what they're doing, and television and radio and social media does that.
Yes, indeed. And that's a fact. I mean, if we talk about Qatar, let's leave South Africa for a minute. For those of us who did not go to Qatar World Cup, we have a certain perception about Qatar as a country. We have a perception shaped by sometimes the negative media that's associated with the place. That how can they hold the event in December? How can they shift our viewing habits or our experience habits? And then what happens? Then a Qatar stages an event, and then becomes one of the best events in the country. Now all of a sudden, all of us have an interest in getting to see Qatar, because we see how the event was delivered, and we get a perspective that is how they deliver everything else. That's how they deliver service, that's how they deliver products, that's how they deliver everything else that the country has to offer.
Now, it's interesting you use the word event maybe 4 or 5 times, but, one thing is having an event, the other is actually managing the event efficiently, effectively, to the point where the brand value of the event and the nation soars. But sometimes you can get it completely wrong. So my point is the perception of the event and is outside of the control of the organizers, isn't it? They have to just hope that people perceive what they see as world class, champion class.
Well, not really. The organizer can also play an active role in ensuring that they can manage and curate the experience. Think about South Africa 2010, when we had the World Cup here. There were lots of people saying, can South Africa deliver the event? Is South Africa safe? Is South Africa an interesting place? What happened? That entire time that the World Cup took place here, there was not a singular security-related event, or rather issue that came out of people who came to South Africa. People were on the trains which took them from anywhere else to the different stations, the public transport, the engaging with the people, the vuvuzelas and all those. When people left South Africa, what did they say? They say, you know what, I'm not going to believe everything I read, because I went to South Africa and I had an incredible experience. So as a country, South Africa deliberately said, we're going to make sure that the place is safe. We're going to make sure that it's easy to access the various venues. We're going to make sure that people experience South Africa how South Africa truly is. Of course, you can control it. But of course, there are 1 or 2 things that you cannot always control. But that happens anywhere else, whether you are Germany or Johannesburg.
Okay. Now the broader conversation we've been having, besides the Comrades, is my opening thoughts on the show today, which is, what makes South Africa great? Now I can list 100, but I thought, let me bounce it off you. Are there maybe 5 things that are known abroad that people see about South Africa? The Comrades maybe being one of them, right? I'd even suggested Debe Kalafeng too, but maybe you just don't have to answer that one. What is it that we do right now that, in spite of all the other problems, that overtakes that and just makes such a positive impact about our country around the world?
But if you look at how, if you want to be technical about how we manage a brand, we use something called Simon Arnold, who's got a hexagon of 6 things that drive a country brand. And if you look at those 6 things, one of them being tourism, one of them being investment, one of them investment in immigration, one of them being people, one of them being, as I mentioned, tourism, one of them governance and all those. South Africa always leads when it comes to people. Our people are known for the humanity and the humility and the Ubuntu. That's who we stand out for. The one other pillar where South Africa truly stands out for is the heritage sector. People hear about Amapiano, they hear about the music, about the arts and the culture, the Esther Mashlangus. We stand out when it comes to that area as well. From a tourism perspective, we probably have the most unmatched mix of fauna and flora and everything else that's related to tourism, including the infrastructure that enables us to deliver a world-class, authentic experience. So, of course, that's how South Africa stands out for those areas.
Okay, last thing in just 30 seconds. In your travels on the African continent and around the world, when you say you're from South Africa, what's the most expected answer that people respond to you in 30 seconds?
Well, in the positive side, they always say, Mandela, Bafana. That's so interesting. And Bafana reinforced obviously by the 2010, and Mandela as one of the most enduring statesmen of the world, African statesmen coming out of our country. And of course, people always say, what a beautiful people coming out of that country.
And that's where we live. In fact, when I went to Singapore and Malaysia after the World Cup, 6 months after, and I went like, from South Africa, they didn't say Mandela, not at all. They didn't say Bafana. They said Waka Waka. So there we are. Let's get the news headlines. It's 5:30. Here's Greg Gross.
Quick look at the headlines. The expelled MK Party founder Jabulani Khumalo says he will attend Parliament's first sitting. The Chief Justice has announced that the first sitting of the National Assembly will take place this Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning. And a U.S. court has ordered Ace Makashile's former personal assistant to the custody of the U.S. Marshal Service. More on that story and other news at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And just fairly heavy around Joburg northern suburbs today. Willie Mandela out of Bryanston up towards the highway is really bad. You got Main and Vidcop and down, so it's a long queue leaving Bryanston on Main Road for motorists trying to get through to Lone Hill. Vidcop and coming across from Pulse off into Four Ways heavy. Lights out there obviously at Main and also down at Leslie Drive. The lights are off there as well. Rivonia Road up to the highway, Bowling Avenue up to Vidcop, and there's just a lot of traffic disruption northern paths today. The N3 going south is a car park from Buccleuch all the way down to Heldenace. That looks really badly backed up. Behind that, the N12 and R24 routes in for the east are really struggling. Roadworks as you leave the airport up through Pomona towards Bopsfontein. If you're Pretoria bound or Tembisa bound, that is heavy. And Durban today, lots of traffic on the M7 leaving the bluff out towards Pinetown. Queues to Bel Air, Wakesley, and then an even bigger queue after that out towards the Belleville Road exit in the Queensborough area. And then Cape Town's R300, that's a heavy one. We warned about this. Roadworks as you come off the R300 onto AZ Berman, Stock Road if you like, at that exit going into Mitchell's Plain, and that traffic arriving on the R300 into that mess is queued all the way back to Delft and looking fairly heavy. Also still plenty of traffic coming out of central Cape Town, Nelson Mandela Boulevard from the city centre, heavy out to Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
Right, Tumi, let's talk cricket.
Yes, we're talking the T20 World Cup because the Proteas are currently playing and it seems like they're struggling this afternoon against Bangladesh, having lost 4 early wickets. Reza Hendricks was out for a duck through an LBW. Quinton de Kock was bowled out for 18, with captain Aiden Markram out for 4 and Stubbs out for a duck. A great concern because South Africa's top 3 have struggled at the tournament this far with just 61 runs collectively in 9 trips to the crease. And perhaps some may say it's because of the pitch. We'll never know. At the crease right now, it's birthday boy David Miller and Heinrich Klaassen. And South Africa is currently sitting on 64 for 4 after 12 overs. Then in rugby, Bulls duo of Kurt Liarense and Cameron Hanekom are up against the Emirates Lions' versatile Sanele Nohamba for the coveted United Rugby Championship Player of the Season award for 2024. The Gauteng-based trio garnered the most votes in the nomination process, with Springbok head coach Rassie Rasmus, 4 South African franchises and local media selecting the star players of the season. The winner will be announced next week, Tuesday, as part of the series of Vodacom URC awards for the season. In football, Bafana coach Hugo Bruce has joined the calls for the use of VAR in the remaining 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers after South Africa's hard-fought 1-1 draw on Friday against Nigeria. Bruce urged CAF to use the technology given what is at stake in the qualifiers. The share of spoils left South Africa in fourth spot in Group C with 4 points from 3 matches, and they are below surprise leaders Lesotho, Rwanda, Benin, with Nigeria and Zimbabwe in the bottom half.
Sometimes, or maybe for this kind of games, I think we need a VR. It's too important. It's too important. And we saw it on AFCON, and it was a good thing, because there were some decisions that you saw after the show on VAR that it was not right or it was right. We are playing for World Cup qualifiers, and I think that in such a competition and for such important games that we need VAR. We need VAR. We need that.
Well, Bafana take on Zimbabwe tomorrow in Bloemfontein, and they'll be looking for another home win. Group C is still wide open with only 3 points separating the current unexpected leaders Lesotho from the bottom placed Zimbabwe heading into week 4 of the competition. In boxing, Filipino boxing legend Manny Pacquiao has confirmed that he's negotiating a comeback fight at the age of 45 against Mario Barrios. Pacquiao is the only 8-division world champion in boxing history with a career record of 62 wins, 8 losses and 2 draws, and has not fought since his loss in August 2021. The Filipino star added that if the negotiations come to an agreement, the fight would probably be staged around November or December this year. Anything's off with tennis. Andy Murray will team up with brother Jamie Murray in the men's doubles at Wimbledon next month. Murray has already committed to playing in the singles as his home Grand Slam one last time, and has agreed to his older brother's request to enter the doubles. The brothers have played competitively before, most recently at the Battle of Brits back in 2022. Well, that's it. It is a wrap from my side. I
had someone, and I'm trying to find the message to say, Ashraf, please sort me out 2 tickets for the Bafana game in Bloemfontein. I thought I'll just tell you about it.
Today?
We're not play Tuesday, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying, is he asking today?
Yeah, he's
with
asking.
The game tomorrow?
Obviously, well, he's confident. So I thought I'll just tell you because, somebody wants 2 tickets. So who am I to
letting me know.
Listen, if you have connections in high places, just let me know so I can just pass on the message. Okay, there we are. So there are 2 tickets to the listener from Bloemfontein. If somebody else responds and says, hey, surprise, we've got it for you.
I'll make a plan.
No, you see? To be said, she's the Minister of Sport after all, right? There we are. Thank you. Let's move on to other issues. In fact, we need to get into business. And marketing and the markets, not so much marketing, but certainly the markets that after a busy weekend, I suppose lots of things to consider around that. So, as always, the MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moyaha. Jimmy, hi.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, Jimmy, go ahead now. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to me, and good afternoon to the listeners. Yeah, we've got a good show lineup today with a lot of results coming through today. We got results from Omnia as well as from Alexander Forbes, and I'm going to have a conversation with each of the company's CEOs, Celine Goebel-Sammy of Omnia and Davy de Villiers of Alexander Forbes. Interestingly enough, Alexander Forbes went on an acquisition spree, and they still have R1 billion available to buy more stuff. So I'm going to speak to Davy and try and figure out what they're buying up next. Then we've got a conversation with our market analyst around some of the movements that have been happening. Obviously, over the weekend, we got some data points, or rather Friday, we got those data points from the US that we discussed on Friday, and they seem to have sent the market into somewhat of an interesting reactionary mode. We're seeing that a lot of market movements at the moment are being driven by those US numbers, plus what we expect to happen this week. We've got Fed Chair Jerome Powell speaking this week, so we're going to try and unpack what that could mean for markets and what that could mean for investor sentiment this week, but also the fact that the CAC 40 in France, which Henko Creer is going to give us an update about, hasn't been doing too well since the current French President Emmanuel Macron has called for early elections following those dismal polls. So it seems as though a lot of political conversations affecting markets, not just in South Africa, but globally. And then we've got our personal finance segment on a Monday, and today we're taking a look at what to think about when thinking about retiring. We often have conversations considerations around making sure that retirement planning is done right and making sure you've saved up enough. But those aren't the only considerations. There's a lot more to look at there. So we're going to look into those and other stories a little later on. But as I said, Henko Kriya has been keeping an eye on the markets for us. He joins me now to give us a quick summary of what's been happening. Good afternoon, Henko. Lovely to speak to you as always. What's been moving the markets today?
Hello, Jimmy, Ashraf and Tumi, and good evening to all of our listeners. Jimmy, like you mentioned, we can start off with that CAC 40 in France, which lost 1.7% today. And yes, that's because of that call that Macron made. Also in Europe, the DAX and the FTSE 100, they each lost 0.5% today. And then at the moment in the US, the Dow Jones is 0.1% weaker, and the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq trading about 0.2% stronger. Unfortunately, here by us, the JSE's all-share index lost 0.9% today and finished at a lower level of 76,188 points. The industrial index lost 1.1%. The financial index finished 0.1% weaker, and the resources index quite a lot, 1.5% down at the end of the day. Some of the companies which had a thorough day today were Alphaman, Vukile and DRD Gold. Alphaman, the most of them all, it lost 9.5% today, followed by Vukile and DRD Gold. They each lost 3.5%. We Buy Cars and Anglo Gold, they each finished 3% weaker, and Kumba, Sirius and Mr. Price as well as Barloworld, they each lost 2.5% today. On the upside, RCL finished 3.6% stronger. Montauk and Karoo each finished 2% up, and Telkom, Italtal and Oceana finished today 1.3% better off. If we quickly have a look at the 10 largest companies on the JSE, AB InBev as well as BATS, they each had a terrible day. They lost 2.7% each. Richmond finished the day 2.5% weaker, and Anglo, Process and BHP each lost 1.3% today. Then if we have a look at the currencies and at the exchange rate, at the moment, you'll pay for a US dollar, 18 Rand 73, for a euro, 20 Rand and 12 cents, for an Australian dollar, 12 Rand 37, and for a pound, 23 Rand 83. On the commodities market, the price of gold is trading at $2,305 an ounce. Silver is still sitting comfortably at $29.50. Platinum, $972. And palladium, $889 an ounce. The price of Brent crude is $80.70 a barrel. Then to finish off with the price of a Bitcoin, currently trading at $69,950, and that is still 1,340,000 Rand. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. Lots to look into a little later on. I'm going to be looking at some of the movements that we saw, the likes of Oceana benefiting from the sale of more Lucky Star cans. Obviously, that makes up such a big part of their business, and they continue to do well in that respect. But we'll be around a little later on with these and more business stories. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. Right, looking forward to your show from 6 o'clock, right? Okay, let's get to other issues. By the way, I've just got some news that there's a plane that amongst the passengers has the vice president of Malawi, and that plane has gone missing. There's about 9 other people that are linked to him, or Malawian government. I'm not too sure, but certainly the vice president of Malawi is in that plane that's missing. So we'll give you further updates on that as soon as we know. It certainly will come through, I'm sure, in the news as well at 6. Look out for that. Let's get some calls. Active citizen on the line. Hi.
Ashraf.
Yeah, how's it, man? Good evening indeed. Go ahead.
But look, Ashraf, I want to appreciate the efforts that were taken by Chief Justice to pronounce the date on which the MPs will be sworn in. The reason I'm saying this is that if we are not careful, Zuma will hold us at ransom. Zuma will like this country to be run at his own whims. We'll be like Mogadishu and Somalia, where every town and every province has got its own rebel government, and we cannot afford to do that. So I'm saying to South African law enforcement agencies, be on the state of high alert, and if needs be, Zuma must be arrested, because really, this gentleman, his aim is to conduct the affairs of this country like Swaziland, like the old ages of Shaka Zulu and so forth and so on. And we cannot allow that to happen.
But what must he be arrested for now? I mean, just quickly, on what basis will he be arrested now?
No, I'm saying, should he instigate violence against the action, against the government, the swearing in of MPs and any other constitutional aspect that needs to be dealt with, he should be arrested.
Okay, got that. I think you've made your position loud and clear from our side, of course. It's a case of wait and see what happens. I hear what you're saying about Somalia, and you're right about Somalia and its fiefdoms. Is like, yeah, a whole lot of, Joburg's got its own government, Pretoria's got its own government, Cape Town's got its own government, and all these small, because they just can't agree on things, and it really undermines the entire country. So thanks for that, as after all, you are the active citizen, right? Okay, let's get another thought. Bonakele in Khayelitsha, that's in the Western Cape, of course, right? You're live on the National Pulse. Hello.
Yes, Ashraf, Bonakele, of course.
Yes, of course, yeah. Good talking to you, man. Right, go ahead.
Look, I cannot stop my happiness, or I'm extremely happy with regard to the sitting of the parliament that is going to go ahead, with the exception of this MK party that seems to be a problem, giving people of South Africa a headache, so to speak. So that's something that I wanted to phone about and say, I wish they can stay away or not even go into coalition with the ANC. We will be much better without this party, my friend. These are people that are going to give people problems.
But what do we do? I mean, you see, the reality is, if you're talking of the MK party, they represent 14% of the electorate. 14% of people who voted believes in them. You can't whisk that away. That's democracy.
Meaning, therefore, for me personally, I didn't vote for them. It is for the people who voted for them who should be worried. As to see these people that they voted for, they are not serious about going ahead and do the delivery service. If you're going to happen to be visiting the courts and doing all this kind of alcoholic and nonsense, so to speak, because it's about time people must get along and work together towards giving service to the people instead of doing what they wanted to do. And I must tell you, I must be honest with you, remember what President Zuma said prior to the election. He was talking about 2/3, of which he couldn't manage to get the 2/3. Where does it think he get the 2/3? And the IEC declared the elections were free and fair. Why only them? Because they expected that they're going to win the 2/3 nationally. That's a dream, my friend. It's a joke.
Okay, got that. You've expressed yourself very, very clearly and articulately, and I certainly know where your feelings lie. I wonder what others feel about that. They did say 2/3. They were very, very clear on many conversations. I mean, I've had certainly with in Lamulo and Lela, they were like, we're going to win 2/3. In fact, at the IEC, when they got 14%, their biggest argument was that this has been rigged. We, in fact, won the election. They were talking about 50 plus 1. They won the election. I see that comment's not happening right now, by the way, right? Okay, thanks for that call, Bonakele. Let's get to Sia in Pretoria. Hi, Sia.
Hi, how's it?
Oh, good indeed, right? What do you want to get off your chest?
Actually, I was listening to the Youth League guy speaking about the coalition and what they expect, and speaking about them expecting anyone to just be part of what they want.
Yeah.
And I think you asked him about the DA, and he said if they agree on some principles, they will partner with them as well. I think what I want to point out is just that these people are just playing politics, and I think ANC specifically has actually abandoned their mission, which used to be a liberation movement that sought to actually bring about redress in this country. I think in that respect they've failed, and what they are doing right now is just to hold on to power, and they are agreeing with whoever is paying them. And I think that's really a shame, because the coalition between the DA and the ANC they are not like-minded. So I don't really understand it, because the policies are completely different. So, yeah.
Okay, but I mean, let me ask you this. I mean, let's there's some confusion here. One thing is this, right? I think let's start with this one. I think the ANC's general policy over 30 years in terms of non-racialism, in terms of being a party that speaks to the majority of the people, I think has been sound over the years. I'm saying that's one part, right? I think the implementation of their policy leaves a lot to be desired, and that's why they find themselves finally in a position where 60% of the electorate doesn't believe in them anymore. It's very, very sad. It really is very, very sad, right? That's the one part of it. Now, the next part, in terms of what do they do next? Listen, all parties need to want to hold on to power. That's a natural thing. Whether they're being bought, I mean, I can't really comment on that. Everybody thinks every party is bought, right? I don't know. But they do have two options, right? That at the moment, if they could choose to be an opposition party, the ANC, but if they choose to, the other parties must get together and find the 50%, and they can't do that. No other parties, because they don't talk to each other. I'm talking about the DA needs the EFF and the ANC to be able to, the DA and MK to get to 50%. They don't talk to each other. So the GNU, the Government of National Unity, would be the one way of saying, let's get all the parties on board. And it's based upon parties that don't agree with each other, not parties that agree with each other. But here's the point, even there. If parties are already ruling themselves out, MK has done that, EFF is suggesting that they're going to be out, and others are saying don't deal with the DA, for example, then what's going to be left? How do we find a solution that sticks? So it could well be a situation, like it or not, you or me or anybody else, that the ANC and DA may find themselves the only two parties in town, if you get my point.
Yes, I think that's actually what they're playing at. That's what I'm saying, that it's all politics. They knew specifically, they chose to go that route so that they can expel MK and EFF, because they know that MK and EFF, they are actually grounded on their policies and they're not going back on their policies. Whereas if you actually look on paper, ANC, EFF and MK's policies, they are actually the same. The problem is where you are pointing out that the ANC has actually failed to implement their own policies. Yeah. That is why they are moving further and further to the right.
Okay.
And,
yeah. But see, let's leave it at that. Here's the thing. I'm saying to you that if you listen what's happened in the last week, it's the MK and the EFF that are ruling themselves out of a possible coalition with the ANC for other reasons. Now, that doesn't leave the ANC with much choice. I mean, if someone said to me, what do you think is going to happen? What's happening in the ANC in the next few days? I have no idea, because it's just so confusing in terms of where do they go next. Thanks for that call, Sia. We'll get to other calls maybe just before we wrap up the show, but I'm going to talk, one of the things that we want to talk about regularly is, people doing just great things in which we have a capacity, right? And we're going to talk about this UFS is the University of Free State connection with the Republic of Korea right after this.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, so how is this? The University of the Free State announced the accreditation of its medical program by the Republic of Korea. So UFS benchmarks itself against local and international institutions, and this affirms its place as one of the top-tier medical schools in the world. So let's find out more about this accreditation of the University of Free State's medical program by the Republic of Korea, what that really means, okay? With me, we in fact are going to get to the guest in just a second. That's Professor Nicholas Pierce, who's the head of the School of Clinical Medicine, right? Prof. Pierce, appreciate your time. Hi.
Hi, good evening to you and good evening to your listeners.
Right, so it sounds like exciting news. Is it exciting news?
Well, for us, it's always exciting. I mean, as a medical school in this country, we're always accredited regularly internally by the Health Professions Council of South Africa. And we're accredited in many international countries accredit us. But this is a new accreditation, and that means they looked at our current curriculum, looked at our standards, looked at our training, and looked at what South Africa has to offer, and said that we're equal to them, if not better than them. So they accredited us as one of the accredited universities in the world. And that is exciting, that the medical graduates we produce in this country are internationally recognized. And that's an exciting step for us as a country. Not just as a university of the Free State, we're excited about that, but as a country to know that our standards are on par, if not better, with other international institutions. And that's exciting.
Well, we look for champions every day, absolutely. So we're on board on that one. Now, what are the implications then of this accreditation?
Well, the implication on a practical point of view is that when our graduates graduate, they would be able to go to South Korea or the Republic of Korea and write their board exam. You have to write their board exam. That's to try and understand their local acts, their local regulations, local vaccination policies, etc., and then would be able to practice there as any other doctor that graduated from their own country. So you're an equivalent doctor to their own doctors in that country, and that's exciting for us. I mean, as you know, the Republic of Korea or South Korea is one of the largest economies, a great healthcare system, and that indicates just the level we're reaching.
And this process you're saying, I mean, that initial connection, because one thing is the connection, then you obviously have to convince the Koreans of what you do. Why would they be so interested in accrediting the University of Free State? I mean, what's in it for them?
Well, what's in it for them is that they can get our graduates. They're good. They can use our graduates as medical doctors, which is sad for us as a country because we're losing our graduates to a foreign country, and that's sad. But it also, for them, they can get top quality graduates from different countries around the world and enrich their program, enrich their teaching experience. So for them, they get the best from around the world, and that allows them to get top quality doctors in their country. But it's sad for us as a country. I mean, we do need healthcare professionals. So on the other hand, it is sad for us. But I mean, the youth of this era tend to travel and tend to want to go all over the world. So that's just one of those things. But we're proud that we measured up and we're found not to be wanting. And I mean, that's exciting for us.
And I mean, is that the role of the university, which is to train students, to let's say in the medical fraternity, but is it not also to hold on to them? I mean, to ensure that they give off their abilities and their skill set and provide it in South Africa? That's why they sign up in the first place. No,
I totally agree with you. We'd much prefer our graduates to stay in this country, but I think the youth want to travel. They want to go around the world. So definitely for us, as a healthcare professional, I'm a medical doctor myself. To service your country is an honor. But if they want to go overseas, well, you're not going to stop this. The youth of the day, we want to give them opportunities beyond just our borders. And I think it reflects the quality of education. But it's sad for us to lose good quality graduates to around the world. But in the same vein, we attract other graduates from other countries. And I think it's a quid pro quo. We get some of theirs, they get some of ours, and that enriches our country and enriches our medical program.
And I take it that, again, a student in Korea then could sign up to study there and then find out about the link to the University of Free State and somehow then get diverted to South Africa. I mean, is that likely to happen? Have you had conversations about that?
It can happen. We would then go through the Health Professions Council. They'd have to be accredited. Their curriculum would be accredited by our health professions, and they'd have to write the board exam in our country. And just as we have to do this similarly in a reciprocal relationship. But it could theoretically happen, yes. We have relationships with, at the moment, like, for example, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand. So this is just one more country. But what's exciting is they evaluated the current curriculum. We've had long-standing relationships with other countries. But this is a new accreditation, new evaluation. That's exciting for us.
How does, the University of Free State's curriculum then measure up against the very, very best in the world? In the medical space, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Is you think you're doing well, you think you're great, you think you're wonderful, but are you really? And this allowed us an opportunity to be compared to a country with a great economic outlook. That's a very powerful country in the world, offering great healthcare. Are we good enough? We were measured against them, and we were found to be good enough, and if not better than them, and they had no hesitation in accrediting us, and that's exciting.
Well, exciting is what you said maybe 4 times, so I get that. Prof. Nicholas Pierce, thanks for your time, head of the School of Clinical Medicine at the University of Free State. So they are linked now where they can write their board exam in Korea. If South Africans happen to be living there or wanting to study there, then they can connect with the Free State course. That's how interesting is that. I'll get to some of the calls and your WhatsApps in just a moment. So here's a question about here's an interesting one for WhatsApp.
Evening, Ashraf. How are you? One question. Maybe you may have an answer, or some listeners out there may have an answer on this one. What is the agenda of the Parliament on Friday? Is it only the swearing in, or are they going to nominate the president and all of those things? Who will be the president, deputy president, and whatnot? What's the story? Thanks, because one guy just gave me a call. He said, no. On Friday, what's going to happen, the agenda is that there will be also a nomination of a president and whatnot. And I'm a bit confused about that one. Thanks, Langa, from my respect.
Okay, Langa, you should become a broadcaster. I'm listening to your voice, man. Wow. Okay, listen, here's my understanding. Yes, the MPs will be sworn in, the 400 or whoever pitches up will be sworn in, and then there would be, the election of the Speaker of Parliament, and then the Deputy President and the President. So the most significant one for all of us is that a President will be elected on Friday. That's it. Now, you could have an election without a majority party where they agree that means they don't come to an agreement of coalitions. Then they'll have one or two rounds till they get to get a 50% mark, which means the ANC will have 40% voting for their president, for example. And then you could have a situation where Ramaphosa, for example, will be elected the president with only 40% of the vote in one or two rounds. Ultimately, they would have to get 50% because the lowest votes drop away. Or it could be in one sitting. If everybody agrees and they got parties to get them to 50% plus one, then that's it. The president will be elected in one sitting. And then, of course, the following week, there's the inauguration of the president sometime round. Hopefully you got all of that. Let's see if there's one. In fact, there's a quick call. Sipho in Mamelodi. You got 30 seconds, sorry, Sipho. I know you want to make a point about Brian Molefe. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, what happened to Brian is really sad. This is just a career destroyed. The media played a very big role. When he was being prosecuted, he was all over the news. And then now what's happening is the case is withdrawn, and then there's nothing on the news. And then the people that actually brought the case in, they're not being interviewed and then asked why, why they dropping this thing. And then, it plays a very big question on cases that are prosecuted just to character assassinate, people.
Well, okay, let's leave it at that. We're on to news time. That's a question perhaps we need to speak to Corruption Watch and others in the days coming ahead. Thank you for your time. Thanks for being a part of the show. Every one of you, the calls, the WhatsApps, the posts on the X platform, on Facebook, and everybody else. Just enjoy being part of it. And as always, we answer that question, or we ask the question, what drives or what moves the national pulse? Well, now you certainly know. Let's get the news at 6. Here's Greg.
Thank you again. Ashraf expelled MK party founder to attend National Assembly sitting in Switzerland to host Ukraine Peace Summit.